as the enforcer of political correctness. Am I off base in drawing that conclusion, and why do you think?
No, not at all. I mean, it's amazing when I see some of the stuff.
Civil rights groups have long criticized the radio program for its promotion of, quote, neo-Nazis, Holocaust deniers, raging anti-Semites, and other extremists. After coming under scrutiny for the interview, Trump Jr. blamed the incident on a booking error. Edwards and his syndicator claim otherwise. Regardless of what happened, the fact remains that the Trump campaign continues to flirt with white nationalist support. For more on this and other stories, please visit MediaMatters.org.
Chances are, when you took a shower this morning, an AFSCME member made sure that water was clean. When you drove to work, an AFSCME member maintained the road. When you rode an elevator, an AFSCME member inspected it. I'm David Philman, Executive Director of AFSCME Council 13, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. AFSCME members enforce regulations, keep prisoners behind bars, take care of patients, protect the environment, and more. The work isn't glamorous, the salaries aren't high, but AFSCME members serve the public in every aspect of our daily lives. Chances are, you'll never see that AFSCME member working in a sewage plant, diving underwater to repair a bridge, or answering a 911 call. But aren't you glad they do? For more information, visit AFSCME13.org. We are AFSCME. We make Pennsylvania happy!
There's a Vietnam vet with a cardboard sign sitting there by the left turn line, a flag on his wheelchair flapping in the breeze, one leg missing and both hands free. No one's paying much mind to him. The VA budget's just stretched so thin, and there's more coming back from the Mideast war. We can't make it here anymore.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. I just got an email. I mean, just within the last couple of minutes, this email I got from Pat Toomey with the byline supporting our veterans. And, you know, what struck me is it didn't say what he's actually doing for veterans. It's more of a guy who served in Vietnam, and good on him, and we honor his service. It's him saying how wonderful Pat Toomey is, and not for things that the guy's actually done. That's what's really just bizarre to me. When you have someone like Toomey who's doing the photo ops and putting this stuff out there, I open the email hoping to see, okay, what did he vote for? What did he push? What did he do? And I haven't seen that, which is why we've asked our friend Will Fisher to come talk with us. He's the director of the Union Veterans Council. Will, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, thank you so much for having us today. It's it's no surprise Pat Toomey didn't take the opportunity to talk about anything he's done for veterans or recent votes related to veterans, because we can't forget it was Pat Toomey who voted against the Veteran Job Corps. It was Pat Toomey who voted against increasing bankruptcy protection for members of the military, veterans, and our families. And it was Pat Toomey who voted against expanding veterans' health care, education benefits, and job training. Those are all sourced and have all votes that have been taken very recently. The voting against expanding health care benefits in the education and job training aid, that occurred, only last year.
So not surprising that the only thing that he would be putting out is someone saying glowing things about him, not him actually doing his job.
Exactly. And when you're a Koch brothers endorsed candidate like Pat Toomey, if there's one thing the Concerned Veterans for America, the Koch brothers front group, has shown us, it's that, you know what, you can go dig around in the ditch and the sewer, and under some rock you'll be willing always to find one traitorous veteran who's willing to go out and say whatever it is the Koch brothers want them to say. They're so steeped in this Koch brothers anti-working class, anti-veteran class Kool-Aid that they're willing to say whatever it is. And I think that yet we've found another example of that here today.
And it's not. Look, I mean, Pat Toomey's not alone in this. I don't know if you watched last night's debate. And I got to be honest, I'm ashamed of everyone.
Are we allowed to call them debates anymore?
Yeah, I don't know. That was more like a pie fight. Not even that. I mean, it was like a booger fight. If you saw Ted Cruz eating his own, and this is the sad thing. We were listening in the car driving back from the Globetrotters game, and I actually had to put headphones on because I was embarrassed that my children were hearing that. How screwed up is that?
I know. And we won't even begin to discuss that. You know, yesterday Donald Trump saying that he could have told Mitt Romney to get on his knees.
Yeah.
Then we had Donald Trump in the debate last night making references to his, genitalia. And it's no longer shocking. Like, where are we in the world, Rick?
Look, hey, no, Howard Stern got a mention in a debate. Come on.
Oh, well, it was on the Howard Stern show also where Donald Trump said a couple years ago, compared his sex life to serving in the Vietnam War in combat. But again, what solutions are we hearing for, veterans? I certainly hear these clowns up on stage advocating that they want to order young servicemen and women to commit war crimes. I heard that. I heard them say that they, are proponents of, ethnic cleansing and of going out and murdering people. I heard them talking about that. We hear them talk about a lot, but it's very rarely that we hear any of them actually say anything. Donald Trump talks a lot about our service, and by our, I mean, me and my comrades in our service in the military and in combat, but you don't hear him talk about, his the medical deferment his daddy bought for him so he didn't have to go to Vietnam. You hear him talk about what they want to do to get veterans, lined up with good jobs, but you don't hear them talking about their years they've spent busting unions, supporting bad trade deals, and ripping jobs away from veterans. I know I'm on the phone with somebody from Pennsylvania, and you're no stranger to this topic. But all this goes hand in hand with the people who are satisfied and think that they are taking care of veterans by handing out yellow ribbons and by making sure that people have flyovers at football games.
Yeah.
When it's what veterans really need, what veterans really want, is what's getting ripped away from them at Carrier in Indiana, what's getting ripped away from them at Nabisco in Chicago, and what's getting ripped away from veterans all across this country, and that's a job that allows somebody to own a home and live with dignity. That's what veterans want, and that's what veterans need. Instead, we have this clown posse, this, confederacy of dunces who wants to only, puppet veterans out in TV ads. They want to puppet veterans out when they don't feel like participating in debates, like Donald Trump with his veterans event. And, there was a Washington Post article that came out last night that, hey, where's the money, Donald? Because they did an independent inquiry, and only less than half of the $6 million raised has actually even gone anywhere that's accountable.
That's an excellent question, and it's one of those things that I'd been thinking about for a while because, as you know, he had boycotted the debate to have this veterans photo op up for himself, and a couple of his rich friends gave some money. I guess about $3 million of it came from his rich friends. And yet, where is it? And that's a good question. Where is the money? And I guess the other question is with Romney calling for Trump's tax returns. I think a big part of that, and I think the reason Romney's throwing it out there, a whole bunch of reasons, but part of it being, Trump's this newfound love of the troops. What's he donated in the past?
I can't figure out what the exact. I don't want to. I'm paraphrasing. But if Donald Trump is truly worth the amount of money he says he is, and what the public donation to veterans and veterans organizations by Donald Trump that we have been able to see are accurate, then, again, the number, Rick, is something like 0.0000015% of this man's money has gone towards veterans. I mean, it is... a grain of sand on the beach. And I do think that, you'll see in a tax return what people are given to and what they're talking about. But it's interesting, Donald Trump's rich buddies who he asked to give some money, they did. They just whipped out their checkbook, they wrote a check, they gave it to the veterans group. Plain and simple. The rest of them, the individuals who were calling in and making small dollar contributions, they were given first to the Trump's own personal foundation, and then he was going to disperse the money. Well, lo and behold, guess which money is unaccounted for.
Yeah, and the question is, there's a whole bunch of questions that come along with that, but I guess it shows an awful lot of what a presidency, I think, would look like. I mean, it's, I often say it's that first thing, it's that first impression, it's that first decision that you see a candidate make that will tell you what kind of president they are. And I think this is that one moment where you go, okay, you had a chance to lead in the public eye, and this is what you've done.
You know what? If Donald, I'll just tell you, you want an image out there, folks listening. You're thinking about voting for Donald Trump. Right now, there is a young man or a young woman in high school that very well could be in high school in Beaver County, Pennsylvania, who, if Donald Trump's elected president, is going to be on television 3 years from now in their own Nuremberg trials. Because Donald Trump's ordered this young person to go execute innocent people in some faraway land. Now, if that's the image you want, if you want to see young American men and women who have joined the service on national television or standing at The Hague or having some type of international tribunal like we had to have in Nuremberg after the Second World War, then if that's what you want to see, then cast your lot with Donald Trump.
But here's the thing, Will. It's not just Trump. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who spew that line. Look, I don't really believe Trump has any true core convictions. I don't believe he has any absolute beliefs. What scares me are people like Ted Cruz, who I fully believe is as crazy as he appears to be. I think Trump's rhetoric is just that. He is bought into this ultra right-wing, far-out talk radio talking points of we should be killing Muslims and smothering them in pig's blood and going back generations and all of that kind of bizarre insanity that you would expect from late-night talk radio, but not in the presidential debate for the person who wants to run this country and be one of the most powerful people in this world. I hope for better, Will.
I do too, Rick. I mean, I can't say it any better than you did. You're certainly right in saying that it's not only Trump. I mean, Ted Cruz, lunatic. He's a lunatic. Marco Rubio, he doesn't know. He's lost. He doesn't know what's going on up there anywhere. He's just wandering around. With sort of like one of those old dolls where you used to pull the string and they talk. They got the Koch brothers pulling his string, saying whatever it is that they want him to say. But you're absolutely right. And then you have John Kasich up there, someone who has made a career of busting unions, someone who's made a career of attacking the working class. And he's looking like people are looking at him saying, that guy doesn't seem so bad.
Yeah, I mean, he's the moderate. When all of the bad things that Scott Walker did and got away with, he tried in Ohio. Understand that. It was just the voters of Ohio who pushed back against the anti-worker policies, and that made him moderate a little bit. I was proud to be a part of that campaign
to repeal SB 5, and I'll tell you, I think one of the great lessons John Kasich got that night is, when he launched that campaign, he was up on stage, and he had Americans for Prosperity up there with him, and he had the Koch brothers, and he had all of his titans of industry who wanted to stand up on stage and support, their governor for going out here and attacking the working class. And on that night, when he had to go out on stage with hat in hand, after he got his bell rung by the labor movement, by the working class of Ohio, to repeal that law, it was a lonely stage. He was the only man up there. He was all by himself.
Yep. And I remember when he announced it. The announcement was you can get on the bus or the bus is going to run you over. And I remember that. Him saying that this is the way the bus is going, and the bus kind of backed over him.
Yeah, it sure did. And right now it looks like the it's not even a bus right now; it's the Trump 747 that's rolling over him.
Yeah. Anybody on did you see anything positive last night for veterans out of that 2-hour debacle?
No. The only positive thing I saw in the debate last night was when they said, all right, we're about to begin our closing remarks, and Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Have a safe trip home. All right, I got you. Now, on the other side of this then, I mean, because, look, it's one thing to say we don't want Trump. It's one thing to say, oh, my gosh, Cruz is insane. Rubio, he doesn't even have hair under his armpits. I guess you could go those routes, but the other side of the coin is are there Democrats who are better on veterans issues?
Well, what's been so refreshing is that both Secretary Clinton and Senator over the course of their debates have repeatedly said, and this is just one example, have repeatedly said that they want to see a strong VA, a fully funded VA, a fully staffed VA, and under no circumstances a privatized VA. Now, that's really great, and it's really refreshing because all we're hearing on the other side is how they want to see a destroyed VA and a privatized VA. So it has been refreshing to see that as unified as the GOP right now is in their anti-veteran positions, both Secretary Clinton and Senator Sanders have been unified in their very pro-veteran, pro-working class positions when it comes specifically to veterans.
And, the hope is that message is getting through. And that, the veterans, come around to the reality that what's best for them is not being forced into, as you've said, war crimes and who knows what down the road, but actually the promises that were made to them being kept on the other side. To me, that's the important part of this. So let me ask you a last line of questioning I've got, because this just kind of, you said a minute ago about Donald Trump and getting out of his service in Vietnam, and we've heard others like Rush Limbaugh and the rest of them who found their way out of it, yet are now the worst hawks out there. And I'm often curious, and maybe you have a thought. I'm often curious why it is that veterans would even listen to folks who figured out how to get out of what they had to go and do. I always find that curious.
Well, I think it should be noted that there's a big difference between someone who, like we'll say Bernie Sanders, for instance, because they'll say, well, what's the difference? Bernie Sanders was a conscious objector to the Vietnam War. What's the difference between him and Donald Trump being a draft dodger? Well, the difference is, one, Donald Trump was able to use his father's purse to avoid service, to buy a medical deferment, and then has spent a lifetime advocating sending other people to war.
Right.
Right? Senator Sanders wasn't interested, didn't want to believe in the war in Vietnam. A whole lot of other people didn't, and then has not, and has then also worked diligently to avoid sending other people and their children to war, over the course of his time in public life. So there is a difference. I would also say that you say, well, why do people listen to this? One of the main reasons veterans are listening to this, and one of the same reasons a lot of people in the working class are listening to this, is a lack of class consciousness. And that's what we're working on every single day, is to not allow, our fellow veterans to be kept asunder, to keep arguing over Democrat versus Republican, or arguing about guns, or arguing about immigration, but coming together as veterans, as a veteran class, to speak out on those issues that are really impacting all of us the most, especially the need for folks to be able to have good jobs and folks to be able to have access to the health care we earn, and that's health care that's delivered through a strong VA. Yeah,
I'm with you, but at the end of it, I'm always shocked and amazed that the promises we make to veterans, we get away with not keeping, and it's one of those things that's just kind of mind blowing to me, that everyone loves the troops, everyone has like you said, the yellow ribbon, but yet when it comes time to make sure that people get the care that they need, it's odd to me to hear politicians, who aren't 100% voting on those issues. I guess it's odd in my worldview, because I don't know how I could do it.
Veterans have become a partisan issue. That's where we are in the United States today. And that's because veterans are the other 1%.
Well, I'll tell you.
A lot of people aren't veterans. A lot of people who make laws aren't veterans. A lot of people don't even know a veteran.
That speaks volumes about who we are as a people. And at the end of it, We've got to expose who the hawks are and who the people who are like the Donald Trumps and like the Limbaughs and the rest of them, so that my kids don't have to go through, some horrible things because someone wanted to thump their chest. It's angering to me.
Charlatan chicken hawks.
There you go.
Charlatan chicken hawks.
Well, I appreciate the time, man. I appreciate the work you do over at the Union Veterans Council. If you want to check out the website, unionveterans.org, we've got a link at thericksmithshow.com. Just click on Will Fisher's name. It will take you right there. Will, always great talking with you. I appreciate it, man.
Take care. Thank you so much.
Keep up the fight. Let's take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
We'll work for food, we'll die for oil, we'll kill for power, and to us the spoils. The billionaires get to pay less tax, the working poor get to fall through the cracks. So let them eat jelly beans, let them eat cake, let them eat shit, whatever it takes. They can join the Air Force or join the Corps if they can't make it here anymore.
The indictment yesterday, it was a very serious charge. It involved up to, I believe, 10 years of jail time.
Big oil CEO dies just one day after indictment on conspiracy charges.
The bottom line for me is that fossil fuel companies cannot wreck our planet for their short-term profits.
Bernie Sanders pledges to stop 2 more tar sands pipelines. Florida bans fracking bans.
What?
Oregon breaks up with coal. Iowa breaks wind records, that is. Plus,
there are definitely areas where, the earth is covered with pollution almost all the time.
Astronaut Scott Kelly's new perspective on returning to Earth.
All of those new perspectives and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Now, I don't know what my Republican colleagues are smoking.
Oh, I think you do, Bernie Sanders. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, I know when you started working on this story, it was about accountability for a crime. Now, this story has suddenly turned into something quite different.
Yes, that's right. Oklahoma City police say that the controversial former CEO of Chesapeake Energy, Aubrey McClendon, died in a single-car crash on Wednesday, the day after the Justice Department indicted him on charges of conspiracy to cheat homeowners out of royalties on oil and gas leases. Federal prosecutors alleged that McClendon illegally colluded with another company to rig prices for oil and gas leases in Oklahoma from 2007 to 2012. McClendon's aggressive leasing tactics were legendary in the fracking industry.
And apparently the company itself was cooperating with the Justice Department on this?
It does appear to be so.
Do we know if this was suicide or anything else at this point?
That certainly has been the speculation.
And officials explained that he veered off in traffic and went headlong into a bridge.
Yes, at a high rate of speed without a seatbelt.
Wow, just an amazing story.
In a surprise move, a Republican-led Florida State Senate committee has voted down a bill that would have banned local communities from banning fracking, the controversial natural gas drilling technique that's been linked to water contamination and earthquakes. The vote means that over 40 local fracking bans may stay in place. And that's opposite from most Republican-majority state legislatures across the nation, like Texas, where state legislatures have banned local fracking bans.
So why would Florida Republicans want to do this? Usually they are in favor of fracking.
It was attached to a bill that would have established a moratorium until a study was completed, and they didn't want to do that.
Okay, so instead of killing fracking altogether, they're allowing localities to ban it if they want.
Right.
Well, I guess that much is a good thing.
In presidential politics, Senator Bernie Sanders at a rally in Minnesota came out against two controversial proposed oil pipelines across the state. The pipelines are proposed by Enbridge, the same Canadian company responsible for the billion-dollar Kalamazoo River pipeline spill in Michigan 5 years ago that still hasn't been cleaned up. Sanders said he'd use the same test that President Obama used to reject the Keystone XL pipeline.
He wouldn't approve it if it made climate and our planet more dangerous. Those are exactly the same standards that we need to apply to the Alberta Clipper and the Sandpiper, and that is what I would do as President of the United States.
Despite his stance to keep fossil fuels in the ground, Sanders won Super Tuesday contests in the oil states of Oklahoma and Colorado. Oregon breaks up with coal. The Oregon State Legislature this week passed two bills that will phase out the use of coal in the state by 2030 and require utilities to generate half their electricity with renewable energy sources by 2040. Iowa breaks wind records, that is. Wind energy in Iowa last year generated more than 31% of all electricity in Iowa, making it the first state in the nation to cross the 30% renewable electricity mark, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration.
Way to go, Iowa.
Finally, NASA astronaut Scott Kelly safely returned to Earth with his Russian cosmonaut colleagues on Tuesday after spending nearly a year orbiting the planet on board the International Space Station. In his final press conference from space, Commander Kelly said his unique vantage point gave him a new outlook on the environment.
There are definitely areas where, the Earth is covered with pollution almost all the time. And, it's not good for any of us. And, there are weather systems that I've seen while I was up here that were in places that were unexpected, storms, bigger than, we've seen in the past. And this is a human effect. You can tell that is not a naturally occurring phenomena. It is just a blanket of constant pollution in certain areas. So, we can fix that if we put our minds to it.
Well, that's a whole lot of ifs, and it relies on a whole lot of minds in this country that, well, anyway, welcome back to Earth, Commander. For much more on today's stories and the ones we couldn't get to, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find us and follow us on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
I'm on the top of the world, looking down on creation, and the only explanation I can find is the love that I found.
Minimum wage! Yeah!
You know what it means when they pay you minimum wage? You know what they're trying to tell you is like, hey, if I could pay you less, I would.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Randall sent me an email that kind of got me thinking a little bit. He said, you hear that $15 an hour legislation has been passed in some localities, but I can't seem to find a current $15 an hour locality. A lot of the legislation seems to put the $15 an hour into effect in the distant future, and by then it won't be worth $15 an hour. And that's true, Randall. The reality is I can only find one place where the $15 an hour went into effect almost immediately, and that was SeaTac, Washington. And that was only for a very defined sector of the employment, which was around the airport. So any of the hospitality jobs, any of the airport jobs, any of that industry jobs, those were the $15 an hour jobs. In fact, they went all the way to the Washington Supreme Court over it, and it was upheld. They can do it, not like Pennsylvania. Now Birmingham, Alabama, they passed a $15 an hour minimum wage law, and that was a couple year step increment upward. But the state of Alabama decided to follow Pennsylvania's lead and take away local control and basically scuttling and retroactively usurping the will of the people. And, so much for we love the voters and let the voters decide. But yeah, I can't find many places where it's $15 an hour today. And I don't know that anyone was really saying we want $15 an hour this right moment, because I don't think many people think that that's possible right now. So the stepping up, moving forward, heading in the right direction, I think that's important. And the bigger thing, along with raising it up, is indexing it so that it's no longer a political issue. We no longer have to wait 5, 6, 7 years, 8 years. What's it been? 2006 was the last time it was passed here in Pennsylvania, 10 years ago. And that was $7.15. So, yes, Pennsylvania's minimum wage is lower than the federal minimum wage. It's $7.15 here in PA. Now, as everyone knows, the federal law mandates you have to at least come up to this. So because of the federal law here in Pennsylvania, everyone got that golden dime. Yes, that life-sustaining dime. That dime that says you, too, can have a piece of bubble gum every 2.5 days. Because you can no longer get a piece of bubble gum for 10 cents. They're now a quarter. Ask me, I know. And most of them are no longer just a quarter. Most of them are now 50 cents. So that entire, that huge dime, more than a week of work for that one bubble gum. So thank you, federal government, for that massive increase in our minimum wage here in Pennsylvania. But the reason I bring it up is there are areas that want to do that. There are areas in Pennsylvania that want to raise the minimum wage. But thanks to the leadership of the Republicans here in our state, they have decided that, local communities, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Carlisle, Harrisburg, whatever, you can't have the power to decide what happens within your boundaries, especially when talking about setting the conditions for employment and wages. You can't do that. It only can be done at the state level. And that was the pound of flesh that Republicans were given for the whopping $7.15 increase a decade ago. So just so we're clear on that. Also, just so you know, Republicans want to take away local control on paid sick day and family leave and that kind of stuff too. They want to make it only that the state can do it. The people who tell you that they want big government out of our lives, them, right? Yeah, so there you go. On news on the minimum wage, though, good news, I guess. Costco, who I'm a big kind of supporter of. I like the company. I think they do a good job. They have decided that they're going to give their workers a raise, first minimum raise increase in the company in the last 9 years. They're going to jump it up $1.50. So anyone starting, I guess, within the next couple of months will see at least $13 to $13.50 an hour working at Costco, a jump from the $11.50 to $12. What stopped me is their top rate. After 4 years, you get to the top wage. Their top wage was $22.50 an hour. And you go, that's what it should be industry-wide. And this is where having strong unions and strong union density in an industry would raise that wage up. Look, if Costco can do it, Walmart can do it. And I know Walmart just raised their minimum wage up to, I guess it was $10 an hour they're going to do here soon. They should be pushing that even farther. And that's where having a strong union movement would do that. But I said, wow. That's pretty impressive. $22.50 an hour. You can live on that. You could actually think about this. You could actually have one parent working and lead something of a reasonable existence. You wouldn't be Donald Trump. You wouldn't be the wealth class going to Palm Beach, but you could exist and do okay. Now, the news got out, and according to Bloomberg News, they've reported that this increase is going to cost the shareholders. There's a cut in earnings. It will be a penny for the next 3 months and 2 pennies for the next 3 quarters. Let me say that again, so that workers can have an extra $1.50 in their paycheck an hour, up to $13.50 an hour to start. Top rate at $22.50. It's going to cost the shareholders a penny per share for the next 3 months and a whopping 2 pennies for the next 3 quarters. Just so we're clear on how egregious the costs are and how much the wealth class will suffer from our demanding higher wages. Just think about that for a second, because I think that's important. Because all we hear is, well, Donald Trump was perfect on this. Well, we can't do that because, well, we just need to work hard to get into that upper strata, right? You need to just work harder. You just need to work harder, like me. That trip out of the birth canal, wow, that was tough work. And I should have a lifetime of being surrounded by gold. Look, you can giggle all you want. The reality is that was the toughest journey there. He made it out.
It is surprising that he made it out.
But
he has surrounded himself in gold. It was like a golden birth canal. It must have been.
Well, yeah,
must have been.
There is that. But, the sad reality is in this country, more and more, that one journey is more important than a lifetime of work, because that one thing almost decides your entire course of your life.
It certainly does have something to do with it. Yes.
Not just something. I mean, you look at
Quite a bit.
right now in our time period. And since the end of World War II until now, we now have less income mobility than we've had in that entire time.
Yeah.
So a kid growing up like I did in poverty has less of a chance than I had to get into the middle class.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with that. And why is it that way? Because we give so much to people like Donald.
Mm-hmm. We used to be number one in income mobility and social mobility. And, that's when we had and were able to build that middle class. Now we've been usurped from that position. I think we've fallen down, halfway. I think we're like 20-something or something like that.
Well, the good thing is we're number one in locking people up, and that's a good thing.
By far.
Those are the important things.
Mm-hmm.
We're number one in a bunch of things. Like, we consume more than anybody else.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody wants to be like us.
Mm-hmm. We're also the most anxious country in the world. We're a lot of stressed out people. Very stressed.
Because somebody's going to take our stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that's why we have the most guns in the world. That's why we're number one there. Small arms.
Oh, did you see the debate last night where they're talking about guns? And the question when they threw it out, should there be any restriction on weapons? And I'm going, at least somebody stand up and say, I don't think the average citizen should have a cruise missile or a nuclear weapon or a stealth bomber.
Really?
Somebody at least say that we could agree on that.
Well, that's just fascism there. That's socialism. Socialism, not fascism.
No, socialism was
There's
we would
already
all
a
have-
fascist on the stage. What are we talking about here? Yeah. I think you should have napalm in your garage. I think everyone is entitled to their own canister of napalm, which is totally legal. You can have napalm in your garage, people. That's not good.
Yeah, that's what I want. But the sad reality is, on the gun talk, and it's just insane. We have more guns than anyone else, and yet we're less safe than most places. I know a guy who was an MP in the military for years and years, and he's been all over the world. He said the only industrialized country in this world that he carries his gun is right here.
Yeah.
He goes to any of the other industrialized countries, does not.
No.
He can because of his status of whatever the heck his title is, but he only does it here because of just how crazy we are.
Well, yeah.
Nuts. Yesterday, the president gave a little spiel in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. You may have seen it. Evidently, we have hit 20 million people with Obamacare, and I guess that's something to be thrilled and happy about. Yay. He was in Milwaukee. Why? Well, evidently Milwaukee was the city that won the White House's healthcare sign-up challenge. 3/4 of the city's uninsured who were eligible for Obamacare signed up. 38,000 of the 51,000 people in the city, they signed up for Obamacare. And you look at that number, 20 million people. And look, I know it's got problems. It's got lots of problems. But at the end of the day, and last night on the stage, again, was another one of those, repeal. I have no idea what we're going to replace it with, but it's bad, and we're going to go after it again and again.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about taking 20 million people's insurance away from them.
Yeah. Yeah. Or asking them to pay, $200 as opposed to $70 a month, which there's a reason that this just isn't a sustainable system to begin with.
Now, the interesting part of me is the Republicans are trying now, which I find very odd. Speaker Ryan is trying to bring some Republicans together to come up with what is their replacement, because they haven't had one. Look, I mean, they've voted for repeal 60, 70, 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Every word out of their mouths is repeal, replace. I've often said, their replacement is simple: pay or die. They're trying to figure out how to replace it without the mandate. And the mandate, you go, wasn't that your idea from the start? Weren't you the party of personal responsibility? When did you lose that?
Yeah.
And then you go, oh yeah, when the black guy in the White House said we need to have personal responsibility.
Oh, it's sort of like we're going to agree to disagree, except, we agreed and now we've decided to disagree.
Understand, Obamacare was the guy yesterday giving the speeches care. And it wasn't even his. Don't give Romney credit for it. It was the Heritage Foundation's answer to Hillary in 93. So nothing new to see. It's just that they used to believe something. They were pushing for it. And when they got what they asked for, they didn't want it. It's really twisted.
It makes a lot of sense for that kindergarten rhetoric we saw last night at the debate, that this is their entire strategy as a party.
It's just nuts. Anyway, if you've missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. Thanks for the email, Randall. Right back after this. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show.
Oh, when I'm bathed in the firelight, the moon comes calling a ghostly white. I recall like a rock, standing arrow straight, like a rock, charging from the gate, like a rock.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to thericksmithshow.com. If you've missed any portion of the program, you can download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. A Brazilian federal prosecutor Thursday opened a criminal investigation into alleged crimes committed by McDonald's. The federal prosecutor is looking into allegations of fiscal and economic crimes by McDonald's, including suspected tax evasion and violations of Brazil's franchise and competition laws. The Brazilian prosecutor, Marcos Jose Gomes Correa, has issued an indictment against McDonald's. If found guilty as charged, McDonald's could face serious penalties, fines and penalties of more than $342 million, plus an additional 10 to 50% of the amount of the fine against the company to its CEO. There are also other penalties if McDonald's is found guilty. The UAW is protesting worker rights violations and hazardous working conditions at Ford Auto Parts supplier Ground Effects. The union says the Dearborn Auto Parts plant is interfering with a fair union election process at the plant. John Salazar was fired from the plant. He told the Detroit Free Press why the workers are protesting at Ground Effects.
The main reason we're out here is to get fair working conditions, better pay, safer environment. We have isocyanates that are used, chemicals in the company, without proper ventilation, and a lot of people have had problems with their skin rashes.
10 OSHA complaints were recently filed complaining of repeated skin contact with the isocyanates and the health issues that workers say it's caused. The UAW is trying to organize Ground Effects, and in July the UAW lost by a single vote. The NLRB set aside those election results due to the company threatening to move or close the plant if it went union. Salazar says workers at Ground Effects need a union contract.
We need a contract with the company. Everybody that runs a business or does business has a contract with their company. We think we deserve our contract with this company to be treated fairly and for our job security.
The California Nurses Association, National Nurses United, says the union has reached a real breakthrough with tentative labor contracts for 8,000 nurses. The nurses work at Sutter Hospitals in California, in San Francisco, and the East Bay. The tentative deals cover nurses at facilities in Berkeley, Oakland, and San Francisco. They will vote on the tentative contract next week.
Brought to you by Union Active, affordable, state-of-the-art web design using responsive web technology with easy-to-use content tools, member management features, and a host of other tools that make Union Active your perfect web solution. Designs, prices, and features are online at unionactive.com. Workers Independent News is heard daily on The Rick Smith Show, live 3 to 6 p.m. coast to coast at thericksmithshow.com. The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
Now the lessons of the past we all learn with workers' blood. The
mistakes of the bosses we must pay for. From the cities to the farmlands and trenches full of mud. 'Cause war has always been the boss's way, sir. Come on! The union forever defends.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. You may remember last week we talked about the IT people at Disney being fired. They had all the HB1 visa workers coming in. They had to train their replacements and then go through this whole process of, showing them everything about your job, training them on everything they need. With at the end of it, the dangling of the possibility of another job or a severance package that if you don't play by the rules, you don't get. But one of the things, and you may remember the testimony because we played a bunch of the clips, but one of the moments of testimony was the guy who was testifying saying that there was one of the reasons why you didn't hear more people talking about it.
The second reason that more of them don't speak out is for legal intimidation reasons. From gag orders signed when American workers sign severance package agreements, the American IT worker feels they're legally bound to keep that situation quiet and at most speak anonymously.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of it, I said that's a huge issue. So I see this story at MSNBC, where I'm sure everyone's now heard the story of Melissa Harris Perry, and who knows what really happened in the background, but I guess they're trying to force her into signing one of these gag orders. And here to talk a little bit about this, I've asked Lindsay Williams. She's written an article titled Melissa Harris Perry Bravely Refuses to Sign Gag Clause. Lindsay, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So, you see this in the IT world, you see this gag order stuff all over. I guess I'm not surprised that MSNBC would want to try and force this on Ms. Perry.
No, every employer does it. They're in a superior bargaining position. You've just lost your job. You're trying to figure out how to pay your next rent or mortgage payment. And they're forcing this piece of paper in your face saying, if you sign this paper, you can get this pile of money. If not, then you get nothing. And it's a tough decision for a lot of people to make. It's a privilege that I was able to afford to say no. And, I'm sure it was hard for Melissa Harris Perry to say no, too.
And it's not just people in her position, because I have a friend who, lost a lower management job where, really there's, what are you going to say? But he was forced to sign one of these gag orders and a non-disclosure order, a non-compete, all of this stuff. In order just to collect unemployment. And we're not talking a huge amount of money, but just to be able to have them not fight his unemployment.
Yep. I have a family member who, I'm an attorney, who asked me to read one before she signed it. And same thing. It's, a low, an accounting level job, but they use them all the time at all levels. And most of them are overly broad and do violate labor laws. They violate the National Labor Relations Act. An employee has the right to criticize and talk about their treatment at their job, and they've actually laid out if there is a clause that says they refrain from even something as even saying something defamatory about the company, that's illegal under the National Labor Relations Act. You can say some bad stuff about your company,
especially if it's true.
Exactly. A lot of times, when the National Whistleblower Center, when they illegally fired me for trying to organize a staff union, they put a gag clause. And when I said, if you take that out, we can talk about the amount of the severance. And they said, well, do you want to defame the National Whistleblower Center? I said, well, the statements are true. How you fired me, how you let me go is true. The fact that it's derogatory to your reputation is your fault, not mine.
Right. No, I mean, and I understand that, but at the end of the day, we've given so much power to employers, so much power to the corporate class, and it's not just these gag orders. I mean, you look at the arbitration clauses that are now becoming so popular. You look at all of this stuff that's really taken our power out of our hands and out of our mouths, and locked it up in one of these contracts.
Yep, and most people don't even know that you can say no. And the truth of the matter is, to fight one of these things is virtually impossible. Because it takes so long. You kind of just have to, a lot of times you have to sign them. You have to sign, if you're looking to get that job, you have to sign on the dotted line or they're going to go to the next person who will.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the sad part in all of this is that they have all of the power and control. And it kind of reminds me, going back to my labor history, of the yellow dog contracts of the past. That you had to sign on the dotted line, that you would never consider ever joining a union, ever, or you just don't get the job. And yet those contracts were enforceable, and we had a legal system that upheld them. And, this is, right, to me, almost the same thing.
Yeah, they're used everywhere. And so when I saw that Melissa Harris Perry tweeted about the fact that she didn't sign one, I was like, wow, somebody's talking about it. Because so few people talk about it, because once you sign them, usually there's a clause that says, and after you sign it, it's like this didn't even exist.
Yeah, you got to wonder, though, I mean, how broadly defined this gag order was, because she's a public figure. She's someone who obviously is going to be in a position to talk about this kind of stuff. And I would imagine I wouldn't want to sign it solely because they are so broad, and you could probably get tied up in a whole bunch of legal wranglings for something that really wasn't even meant to be against them, I would think.
Yeah, I saw some other quote from her on CNN Money that she and MSNBC disagreed over what was a disparaging statement. So I don't exactly know what that was, but it sounds like it was a lot broader than she was comfortable with.
Yeah,
and I admire her for saying no.
But the thing is why I thought this was such an important issue is she's an attorney, right? So I believe so. This is kind of her world. She understands this stuff. What about the person who works at the fast food restaurant who makes an employee sign a non-compete clause that they can't work in another fast food restaurant for years because they might have the sandwich recipe, or someone who gets silenced and really was wronged but didn't know any better, and they just signed away their rights without actually knowing that they do have rights.
Exactly. It happens all the time. In fact, there was just a story just recently that the Jimmy John's restaurant chain was doing just that. They were getting their sandwich makers to sign these non-compete clauses.
And that's why I didn't bring up the name, because the reality is these are litigious people, and they will wield this power to make an example of one to silence everyone else, and that's really the scary part of this. It's the chilling effect that happens to everyone else. Yes,
and it's a tough thing to combat, and that's why the NLRB just last year issued these this big 30-page memorandum telling employers the types of clauses that are overly broad and they will strike, but you have to find employees who are willing and able to fight that battle and bring them to the labor board, and it's a tough thing to do.
Yeah. At the end of it, though, I look at this, and the reality is this is why you need to, in my view, you need to have a union, you need to have representation, you need to have a contract that defines this stuff, because, look, our labor laws are antiquated. There's way too much wiggle room for this kind of abuse, and at the end of the day, I still go back to, you may never need the union for anything other than bargaining for better wages, hours, and conditions, and that's great, but, these kind of things pop up, and there is abuse.
Absolutely. They protect you before it becomes a problem.
And that, I think, is where I wanted to take away from this. Because, at some point, we may have one of these pieces of paper shoved in our face. And I'll give you my little experience, and it's not an employment thing. I went to a doctor to have a hip injection. And the first thing they did is they threw an arbitration clause right in my face. 5 pages long. And I'm reading through this thing going, I'm not signing every bit of my right away to do. It's not going to happen. But sadly, most people don't. We're sitting in that room just signing it away without even thinking.
Yep. I mean, it's on every app you use on your phone. There's a arbitration clause, and every, like you said, and when you're sitting down for a surgery that you need, it's just there in front of you.
So what's the answer to all this? I mean, because I look at the failure of the federal government to do anything on this, and this is it's getting out of hand to this point. The states aren't doing it. What's the answer here?
I think we have to start with some of the people who should be leading by example. For my former employer, the National Whistleblower Center, somebody who's supposed to protect workers who step forward and report abuses is using them too. And they shouldn't be using things that they tell others not to do.
Good point.
And I think, telling them start with somebody like that and then move along and you get to the MSNBCs and the Walmarts of the world.
But at the end of the day, I look at MSNBC, and I had some friends of mine with this situation with Melissa Harris Perry who are now looking at them a little bit differently, because they were supposed to be the lefty channel. They were supposed to be the pro-worker channel. They were supposed to be the diversity channel. And you look at this, and there's a lot of questions.
Yeah. It's holding everybody accountable, regardless of what they say, what they present themselves to be. If they're breaking their own rules, you have to hold them accountable.
And again, you have to have a system in place to help hold them accountable. So let me ask you, where do you think this is going to go? I mean, Ms. Perry obviously has taken the front of this. Does this become an issue, or does this die off slowly here over the next couple of days?
I don't know. I hope it doesn't die off, but I don't know that it will. I mean, because they happen and people don't talk about it, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, because I look at her. I look at her, and I'll be honest. She's in a very unique position. She's someone who was very popular. She's someone who has a good following, and there's a lot of things in what happened to her that I believe are what's wrong with our country. The silencing of journalists, this kind of situation with the gag orders, the pay inequality. There's so much of that I think she could be the face and the person that brings that forth.
I agree. I hope that she lands somewhere great, and I have faith that she will because she is a talented journalist.
So let me ask you the last line of questioning, just so people are clear. What should you do if someone hands you one of these papers, says you sign this? What should someone do?
I think you should consult a lawyer and find out really whether you should sign it or not. That's the best kind of advice I have.
Right. But let me ask you the other part of this, because a lot of people don't have the means and the access to be able, especially low-income workers who are, I think, disproportionately affected by this stuff that we just don't hear about. What should they do?
That's part of the problem. I think that's a huge problem. And I don't think there's a really a good resource to send them to say, this is what this 30-page NLRB memo, it's great, but who's going to read through that to say, oh, is this clause illegal? That's not going to happen.
No, and who's going to enforce it? And it's great to have these dictates from the Hill. It's another thing to have the dog who has some teeth, to enforce it.
Exactly.
But I highly suggest folks take a look at your article. I enjoyed it quite immensely. It's Melissa Harris Perry bravely refuses to sign gag clause. We've got a link at thericksmithshow.com. You can also check out her website, which we've got a link at. It's www.fearinghonesty.org. We'll make sure it's there for you to take a look at. Lindsay, I appreciate you taking time for us. Thanks for this, and thanks for the work you do.
Thank you very much.
Great talking with you. Let's take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Millions in this country don't have a dime to spare. Corporations give billions of welfare. Well, millions in this country don't have a dime to spare. Corporations give billions of welfare. Well, millions in this country don't have a dime to spare. Millions in this country don't have a dime to spare. Multi-billions in this country get not a dime to spare.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1933. This was the day that Franklin Roosevelt named Frances Perkins Secretary of Labor. Secretary Perkins was the first woman to hold a cabinet position in the United States government. Perkins brought to her position years of experience advocating for working people. Born in Boston, Perkins attended Mount Holyoke College. She moved to Illinois to become a school teacher. She began spending time at the renowned Hull House Settlement House. At Hull House, Perkins encountered some of the leading fighters for women's rights and workers' safety, while learning from many of the leading labor reformers of her day. From Illinois, Perkins returned east to study economics and sociology, earning her master's degree from Columbia University in New York City. Soon, Perkins became the head of the National Consumers League. While in New York, Perkins witnessed firsthand the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire tragedy. She watched as 146 young girls and women jumped to their deaths to escape the deadly flames, because the doors of the factory were chained shut. The experience profoundly affected Perkins. She would later say the New Deal began on March 25, 1911, the day the Triangle factory burned. She spent the rest of her career working to ensure the conditions that led to the Triangle Fire would not be repeated. Perkins played a key role in crafting many parts of Roosevelt's New Deal legislation, including the passage of the Social Security Act. She also worked to pass the National Labor Relations Act, which allowed millions of workers to earn collective bargaining rights for the first time. During her 12 years as Labor Secretary, Perkins forged new ground for the role of women in government as a staunch ally for working people. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
This is the Media Matters Minute. I'm Eric Hananoki. Donald Trump's presidential campaign is running for cover following the revelation that a white nationalist radio host received press credentials for a Trump campaign rally and conducted an interview with Donald Trump Jr. In the interview, pro-Confederate and white nationalist radio host James Edwards discussed the media's political correctness with Trump Jr. Listen here.
It seems to me that the establishment press has long since abandoned objective reporting and now sees itself as the enforcer of political correctness. Am I off base in drawing that conclusion? And why do you?
No, not at all. I mean, it's amazing when I see some of the stuff.
Civil rights groups have long criticized the radio program for its promotion of, quote, neo-Nazis, Holocaust deniers, raging anti-Semites, and other extremists. After coming under scrutiny for the interview, Trump Jr. blamed the incident on a booking error. Edwards and his syndicator claim otherwise. Regardless of what happened, the fact remains that the Trump campaign continues to flirt with white nationalist support. For more on this and other stories, please visit MediaMatters.org.
Chances are, when you took a shower this morning, an AFSCME member made sure that water was clean. When you drove to work, an AFSCME member maintained the road. When you rode an elevator, an AFSCME member inspected it. I'm David Philman, Executive Director of AFSCME Council 13, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. AFSCME members enforce regulations, keep prisoners behind bars, take care of patients, protect the environment, and more. The work isn't glamorous, the salaries aren't high, but AFSCME members serve the public in every aspect of our daily lives. Chances are, you'll never see that AFSCME member working in a sewage plant, diving underwater to repair a bridge, or answering a 911 call. But aren't you glad they do? For more information, visit AFSCME13.org. We are AFSCME. We make Pennsylvania happy!
You know, I honestly believe everyone in our body is never going to use insider trading to advantage themselves over the best interest of the country.
Forgotten all about that clip. Senator Coburn said, you may remember back during the scandal of the Senate, and I'm often reminded of Bill Frist's office. As the story goes that I remember, his entire staff had bought vaccine stocks back when there were lawsuits, tons of lawsuits over the vaccines causing a whole bunch of side effects and a whole bunch of things. And in one of the defense bills, I remember, they put in a one-line exemption that basically wiped out all those lawsuits and basically gave immunity to the vaccine companies. And immediately everyone in that office became millionaires because the stock skyrocketed because no more lawsuits. And Wall Street got what they want. But, Coburn, they're going, no, we wouldn't do that. We're too good for that. Yeah. And you wonder why. I wonder why people don't trust them. Anyway, job numbers out today. An additional 242,000 jobs added in February. That is better than expected. Economists were looking for 190,000 added. So a sizable jump. Unemployment rate remains at 4.9%. And, it's interesting, and the reason I focus on this, if you listened to the debate last night, or whatever that was, the pie fight, the meet me behind the flagpole, childish nonsense that you expect from, third graders, you would think that the economy was in a free fall. And it immediately, as I was listening to Ted Cruz especially talk about his economic genius and his plans, it kind of reminded me of the South Park underpants gnomes. First we collect underpants, collect underpants, and then profit. And, the kids go, well, explain that. So the underpants gnome runs over to this big chart, and there's a big pile of underpants. Phase 2 is a big question mark, and phase 3 is profit. And that's basically what their economic plan is. First, phase 1, cut taxes, deregulate, let business do whatever they want, give the wealthy everything. Phase 2, silence, crickets. Phase 3, profit, and, more. For everybody. Everything's wonderful. It's happy. And you go, but whoa, back to phase 2 for a second. Because what we have here before us right now, if that wonderful of the thing of the free market that you keep talking about were actually working, wages would be going up, because we had a jobs report this time much better than anyone thought. And in fact, not only has this month done better, the last couple of months have been revised upward as well. December saw a jump from 262 up to 271. January up from 151 to 172. So more and more jobs, more and more. 4.9% unemployment. Understand what that means. That means we are at full employment. What economists used to call 5%, full employment. That means we should be starting to see some wage inflation. But guess what? Here we are, 242,000 jobs in the month of February. A month historically, we don't see a lot of creation. Why? Winter. Yeah. Things a little slow down after Christmas, down a little dip. 4.9 unemployment. Wages actually went down 3 cents. So we're seeing the inverse of what we're told. That big X we learned about in economics class where, as the supply gets tighter and demand gets higher, wages have to go up. Do you have the little thing move to the right instead of to the left? It's not happening. So as I sat there and I watched last night's little debate, I kept going back to all of you guys are vehemently opposed to unions. That's what raises wages, bargaining power, having the ability, let me help you with this, having the ability to get some of that profit. We don't need to be the underpants gnomes. We know how to put more money in people's pockets, give them bargaining power. The invisible hand, which has been invisibly fisting us for at least the last 30 years, there's a problem there. And until we figure out how to get rid of these people like we saw last night, until we figure out how to bring a Republican Party back into the fold who actually does represent the interests of workers and not just the interests of the Donalds, we're in trouble. Because that debacle last night led people to believe that if we just cut more taxes, if we just deregulated more, if we just gave more to the Donald Trumps and to the to the Gates and to the wealth class, everything would be wonderful. Rivers of gold and honey. It would be fabulous. It's just because we tax people that right? I mean, is that not what we heard last night? Is it not what came out of this? More tax cuts, more deregulation equals underpants gnomes.
Yeah, that was about the arithmetic I heard. Underpants gnomes and deregulation.
Where's phase 2? What's phase 2? Because I'm struggling with that. I know you say that if we deregulate and you cut taxes, it's going to be rivers of gold and honey. We've done this. We've done this over and over and over again. And what's it's gotten us? It's gotten us, what, $19 trillion in debt?
Yep.
What's it gotten us? It's gotten us a shrinking middle class where families have to have two parents working just to survive. Like I was telling you during the break, 1987, I was making more money than I make now because wages were considerably higher then, and there were jobs everywhere. There was no reason that you couldn't find a job doing something. And yet today you have this I don't know about you. I don't know how people live on minimum wage. I don't know how it's possible.
Well, I mean, you'd have to really doctor the definition of living there on minimum wage. I mean, what's the point of a minimum wage? And I've never been able to really understand this. What's the point of a minimum wage when working 40 or so hours a week at minimum wage, you're still below the poverty line? What's the point of that? Like, that just never made sense to me.
Well, we want to get those kids their first job,
Because, the cost of college, college is just so cheap that you can totally make that on minimum wage, right?
But understand, there are people who still remember when you could.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunately the largest segment of voters in this country. Are those people who their generation, they worked that crummy minimum wage job, pumping gas or, bagging groceries or whatever, and they were able to pay for their student loan, their debts. And they were able to have a crappy place to stay while they're going. It wasn't great, but it was theirs, and it was affordable.
Yeah,
those days are gone.
Oh, they're very, very gone. And these are the same people that are now all about Social Security, right? So it seems as though these programs, they're such a burden, right? Maybe we should just start cutting all of them. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, because all the jobs will come back.
All the jobs will come back.
It'll be wonderful again.
We won't need them.
Especially those manufacturing jobs, which I got to be honest, I loved the debate with the Donald. Well, why don't you bring your manufacturing back? Because we lost 16,000 manufacturing jobs last month. So while having a good jobs report, 242,000 jobs created, they're all the jobs of, hey, I'll wash your dog and you wash my windows, or do my laundry and I'll cut your grass. They're not making stuff jobs.
No.
Our manufacturing base is being hollowed out. China, and this is where Trump is getting support. I agree with him. China's eating our lunch.
Yeah.
And if we don't have trade policies that stop it, and look, you can say what you want about him as a business person, he's really just playing by the rules that we've set. If we change those rules, he has to bring those jobs back, or they don't exist.
Yes.
I mean, at some point, don't we have something to blame in this?
Oh, most certainly. I mean, that's one of the big causes, or the big problems I have with this campaign. What scares me so much is, they say Americans will get the government that they deserve.
Oh,
well, after last night's debate, geesh, what have we done? Oy.
I'll tell you, scary times ahead. Anyway, so those are the job numbers. Those are the manufacturing losses. And yes, we are having China eat our lunch. And we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Wingnut Week in review. We'll find out what was the craziest. Was it the Donald? Was it the mittens, or was it something else? Quick break, right back.
Exposing that free trade is never free. The Rick Smith Show.
The indictment yesterday, it was a very serious charge. It involved up to, I believe, 10 years of jail time.
Big oil CEO dies just one day after indictment on conspiracy charges.
The bottom line for me is that fossil fuel companies cannot wreck our planet for their short-term profits.
Bernie Sanders pledges to stop 2 more tar sands pipelines. Florida bans fracking bans.
What?
Oregon breaks up with coal. Iowa breaks wind records, that is. Plus,
there are definitely areas where, the earth is covered with pollution almost all the time.
Astronaut Scott Kelly's new perspective on returning to Earth.
All of those new perspectives and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Now, I don't know what my Republican colleagues are smoking.
Oh, I think you do, Bernie Sanders. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, I know when you started working on this story, it was about accountability for a crime. now this story has suddenly turned into something quite different.
Yes, that's right. Oklahoma City police say that the controversial former CEO of Chesapeake Energy, Aubrey McClendon, died in a single-car crash on Wednesday, the day after the Justice Department indicted him on charges of conspiracy to cheat homeowners out of royalties on oil and gas leases. Federal prosecutors alleged that McClendon illegally colluded with another company to rig prices for oil and gas leases in Oklahoma from 2007 to 2012. McClendon's aggressive leasing tactics were legendary in the fracking industry.
And apparently the company itself was cooperating with the Justice Department on this?
It does appear to be so.
Do we know if this was suicide or anything else at this point?
That certainly has been the speculation.
And officials explained that he veered off in traffic and went headlong into a bridge.
Yes, at a high rate of speed without a seatbelt.
Wow, just an amazing story.
In a surprise move, a Republican-led Florida State Senate committee has voted down a bill that would have banned local communities from banning fracking, the controversial natural gas drilling technique that's been linked to water contamination and earthquakes. The vote means that over 40 local fracking bans may stay in place, and that's opposite from most Republican majority state legislatures across the nation, like Texas, where state legislatures have banned local fracking bans.
So why would Florida Republicans want to do this? Usually they are in favor of fracking.
It was attached to a bill that would have established a moratorium until a study was completed, and they didn't want to do that.
Okay, so instead of killing fracking altogether, they're allowing localities to ban it if they want.
Right.
Well, I guess that much is a good thing.
In presidential politics, Senator Bernie Sanders at a rally in Minnesota came out against two controversial proposed oil pipelines across the state. The pipelines are proposed by Enbridge, the same Canadian company responsible for the billion-dollar Kalamazoo River pipeline spill in Michigan 5 years ago that still hasn't been cleaned up. Sanders said he'd use the same test that President Obama used to reject the Keystone XL pipeline.
He wouldn't approve it if it made climate and our planet more dangerous. Those are exactly the same standards that we need to apply to the Alberta Clipper and the Sandpiper, and that is what I would do as President of the United States.
Despite his stance to keep fossil fuels in the ground, Sanders won Super Tuesday contests in the oil states of Oklahoma and Colorado. Oregon breaks up with coal. The Oregon State Legislature this week passed two bills that will phase out the use of coal in the state by 2030 and require utilities to generate half their electricity with renewable energy sources by 2040. Iowa breaks wind records, that is. Wind energy in Iowa last year generated more than 31% of all electricity in Iowa, making it the first state in the nation to cross the 30% renewable electricity mark, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration.
Way to go, Iowa.
Finally, NASA astronaut Scott Kelly safely returned to Earth with his Russian cosmonaut colleagues on Tuesday after spending nearly a year orbiting the planet on board the International Space Station. In his final press conference from space, Commander Kelly said his unique vantage point gave him a new outlook on the environment.
There are definitely areas where, the Earth is covered with pollution almost all the time. And, it's not good for any of us. And, there are weather systems that I've seen while I was up here that were in places that were unexpected, storms, bigger than, we've seen in the past. And this is a human effect. You can tell that is not a naturally occurring phenomenon. It is just a blanket of constant pollution in certain areas. So, we can fix that if we put our minds to it.
Well, that's a whole lot of ifs, and it relies on a whole lot of minds in this country that, well, anyway, welcome back to Earth, Commander. For much more on today's stories and the ones we couldn't get to, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find us and follow us on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
I'm on top of the world, looking down on creation, and the only explanation I can find is the love that I found.
Monday morning feels so bad. Everybody seems to nag me. Coming Tuesday, I feel better. Even my
Yes, thank goodness it is Friday, and after the week that we just had, we need one. We need a Friday to put behind us the insanity that has been. But before we can do any of that and move on into the weekend, I think it's time for our Wingnut Week in Review with our good friend Terrence Heath from the Campaign for America's Future. Terrence, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me back on.
So, you do this Wingnut Week in Review every week. This had to be the most difficult week in the history of your doing this because there was just so much.
Yeah, I know, and it's like, what do I leave out? And there were some things that were just too good or too bad, depending on how you look at it, to leave out. And of course, the big one to me was the debate Thursday night that I think was both entertaining and horrifying, because at some point you're watching this and you realize one of these guys could possibly be elected leader of the free world.
Yep. And in fact, as I said at the beginning of the show, we were driving back from the Globetrotters game, and I had it on my phone, and we were listening it through the stereo. I actually put my earbuds in to listen to the debate because I didn't want my children hearing a presidential debate, Terrence.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, the next one should be held in a middle school boys' locker room, because that's what it almost immediately devolved into. I can't think of when. I'll put it this way. Do you remember when during one of Clinton's campaigns he was on MTV's Candidate Forum, and people were shocked and appalled that he answered a question about whether he wore boxers or briefs?
Yes.
We're so far beyond that now.
Now, evidently, we've got someone defending how big their little guy is.
And I like I said in my post, it's pretty well known, except to people like Donald Trump and Marco Rubio. Usually, the guys that have to talk the most about it are the ones who have the most insecurity in that area.
Yeah.
And the most to prove.
Yeah. Wow.
But what was almost equally appalling or more appalling was, besides the dick measuring contest, if I could say that.
You just did.
Literally had. It got more time than Social Security, climate change, health care, sick leave, equal pay, voting rights. They were less than 100 miles away from Flint, Michigan, where the Republican-led state government let people drink and wash with lead-tainted water for over a year. They talked about it for less than 2 minutes.
Yeah, but here's the thing, Terrence. You seem to think that they care about those things. They don't, and they've never been shy of telling you they don't care about those things, Terrence.
I know, but it's just I think they at least used to, make an effort to give at least an appearance of kind of caring about these things or paying lip service to them. And we've literally gotten to the point where they don't even bother with that anymore.
Yeah, I've been saying for a while we should probably put these debates on pay-per-view. Maybe put them in a caged match. Make them, let them wear boxers or briefs and let them go at it. Which one's standing at the end wins.
We're getting to a point where we may not be able to have them in prime time anymore.
And that's what I said last night. That's why it was at 9:00.
You got to have them after the kids go to bed.
Right, and it was. I don't know. I'm serious. I had to wear the earbuds because I couldn't have my children listening to this kind of discourse, which they would be expelled from school from engaging in.
I mean, I have a middle school age child, and I can tell you, if I heard this coming out of him, he would be getting a disapproving look, and the next thing he would be hearing was, "You need to cut it out," because it's one of the things that literally you don't expect from so-called adults.
Well, we didn't used to expect, but now now I say we just give into it. Maybe have Fart Man come and do the next debate. Let Stern be the moderator of the next debate.
And the amazing thing is that these are the guys who literally Trump is the guy who's getting evangelical votes, right?
It's scary.
The people who used to complain about the coarsening of the culture, etc. It's
Here it is.
It's a transformation of American politics that I just never thought I would see, and I can't imagine where it goes from this point. I mean, people have already said we need to stop these debates.
I mean, at some point, you're right. I think we need to stop having this kind of a circus, and I don't know, maybe get it out of Fox News' hands.
Clearly, these guys don't have anything to talk about or worth talking about.
But what does it say about us? I mean, at the end of it, there was no substance to what they said at all last night. I left that debate after 2 hours of my life, and I did. I wasted 2 hours of my life listening and watching to this debacle, and I came away with no sense of what they wanted to do, what their vision was. Nothing other than Ted Cruz ate a booger.
I think that may work to their advantage. Because I think if they talked about what they really want to do, poll after poll after poll after poll shows that the overwhelming majority of Americans don't want that.
Yeah. So you're saying all of this is the shiny thing in the room to get us not looking at what's really going on.
Room that kind of distracts people on one side while they're talking out of the other side of their mouths to an entirely different group of people. I wrote earlier this week about Donald Trump and his associations with white nationalist and white supremacist groups, and it's no accident that these groups are attracted to his message, and it's no accident that they heard his disavowal, so-called, and basically don't buy it.
No, I mean, there's a wink nod there.
I really think that he's disavowing them because he's giving the appearance of, well, I have to say I disavow it, so I disavow it.
Right, but let me ask you this, Terrence. Do you really think he's a racist, or do you think that he understands that these are useful idiots that will vote for him and will really cause some notoriety in news and get his face plastered all over everything?
I think a little from column A and a little from column B.
Okay.
I think yes, you know what? He does have some racist leanings. I mean, everything that I've seen and heard from the man tells me that pretty plainly. And it's something that, I think in a broad sense, well, we're all a little racist because it's part of the soup that we've been, basting in or cooking in this country for hundreds of years, for generations.
Right.
So everybody's got some of it, but most of us learn to recognize it and unlearn it. But Trump's never had to. Given where he's coming from, the kind of inherited wealth he was born to, and used to being the guy in charge, he's never had to do that.
But you listen to him; it's only $1 million, Terrence. He only got $1 million. That's it.
And just giving, things like the speech that he gave to a Jewish or a group of Jewish donors that was actually rather anti-Semitic and full of Jewish stereotypes.
Yes, it was.
That he seemed blithely unaware that this would not go over well with this crowd. I'm sure there were people in the audience who were having what I always call a Jar Jar Binks moment, where you're looking around going, am I hearing this right? Am I the only one who's hearing who's hearing this? Is he actually saying that? So I think it's a little from column A and a little from column B, because I think he also knows that this is a useful thing for this segment of voters.
Yeah, and that's the scary part of it, because I think a lot of his shtick is well planned, well thought out. I think a lot of his shtick is just to incite and to enrage. It just is what it is. I did want to ask you about another motion, because there are people I feel sorry for. Like I feel sorry for whomever is sent out to interview every woman Donald Trump's ever slept with, looking for one to tell them.
Yeah.
I do not, however, feel sorry for Chris Christie, who appeared this week to have a nervous breakdown in public.
Yeah, it was literally one of those moments where you could pinpoint exactly where the wheels fell off. And he did it entirely to himself. And it's an amazing kind of transformation in American politics, because Chris Christie was the big man, the big Republican celebrity bully, prowling the stage and chewing out ordinary people left and right, and humiliating people left and right who dared question him at all, and was famous for it. I mean, he had the kind of fans in the GOP that groups like One Direction have among the tween set. They commented on his videos and sent them back and forth. He had a whole team of staff members whose only job was to follow him around to town hall meetings and watch him go off on constituents and then post those videos to his YouTube page, and conservatives ate it up, and it looked like he was going to be the guy to lead the GOP back to the White House.
Yep.
And one of the kind of beautiful things that happens every once in a while is you see a bully meet up with a bigger and better bully, someone who's better at it than he is. And that's what happened to Chris Christie. And it was bad enough that conservatives were already looking at him kind of askance, because they considered him as having betrayed the party a couple of times. And then for him, when he drops out of the race, what does he do? He goes for the jugular. He can't resist taking one last swipe at his closest rivals, even if it involves or it means sabotaging his own party.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not setting fire to your bridges, burning them behind you. This is taking a bazooka and just obliterating them from existence.
This is annihilating any chance, because, look, he's done, and I'm glad to hear that. And I'm also hoping that in New Jersey they lock him up or make him at least walk across the George Washington Bridge at rush hour, something. But he deserves what he gets.
I've never heard of anything like this before, but I think 6 or 7 newspapers in New Jersey, in a joint editorial, have called for his resignation.
See, he's a uniter.
Using the words like embarrassment, disgrace, hypocrisy. And that's why it was, to a lot of people, just kind of a beautiful moment. Like I said,
pure
the
gold.
only thing that's better than watching a bully get his comeuppance is watching it come from another bully.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, Chris Christie is reduced to Donald Trump's lackey. And as it happens to everyone, at some point, you realize you have this moment of clarity, this moment of realization where you realize exactly what is happening to you.
And his was caught on film.
What your part in it
and
was.
his was caught right on film for everyone to enjoy over and over again.
Everyone to see. I think Actually, I think Jonah Goldberg probably interpreted what was going on in Christie's mind, which was, what have I done?
Exactly. If you want to take a look
at... what have I done?
Yep. If you want to take a look at Wingnut Week in Review, we've got a link at thericksmithshow.com. Just click on Terrence Heath's name, takes you right there. Terrence, always great to talk with you. Look forward to the next Wingnut Week in Review. I just don't know that you're going to have so many choices as you did this week.
I don't know if it can get better or worse than this week, but we'll see.
All righty. Thanks so much, Terrence. Great talking with you.
Thank you.
Terrence Heath, Campaign for America's Future, ourfuture.org, the website, or just go to thericksmithshow.com. Click on Terrence's name, take you right there. Quick break, right back. Stick around.
We gotta get old tonight. We gotta do it today. No more madness, confusion. No more disarray. We gotta get old tonight.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Why are we Americans stuck with an out-of-date railroad system, while nations with a small fraction of our resources are cruising on high-speed rail networks? Because our leaders sold us out to corporate hucksters who destroyed our once great passenger train system by telling us that we Americans deserve the independence that comes from a glorious new doctrine of one person, one car. Yeah, the independence of being stuck in traffic jams. As early as the 1930s, giant corporate consortiums formed to buy out more than 100 of America's networks of streetcars and interurban train systems. Not to run them, but to rip out the tracks and pave over the rail right-of-ways to make roads. The biggest of these consortiums combined the enormous political and PR power of General Motors, Standard Oil, Firestone, and Mack Trucks. Likewise, corporate profiteers mounted a new offensive in the 1990s to undermine the higher speed potential of Amtrak's Acela trains, funding such coke-headed front groups as Cato Institute and Heritage Foundation to push hokey analyses branding Amtrak as a slow train to collectivist hell. They also bought trainloads of politicians who are still promoting the fabricated studies and talking points of the petro cabal to wreck as much of Amtrak as they can and derail fast train proposals. Railroad executives themselves preferring the oligopolistic and very profitable freight business to passenger travel play along. This is Jim Hightower saying there's no economic, technological, geographic, budgetary, or conceptual barrier to our country having the best, most effective, state-of-the-art train service in the world. The reality is the U.S. is in the caboose of transportation innovation only because special interest politics continues to thwart our national will, leaving us with a rail system that's a national embarrassment.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's populist take on what the powers that be are up to. Find out more at hightowerlowdown.org.
Keeping the chambers of commerce within their gated communities. The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. You know, you look at that video, and I had to look at it again. The little gif of just his body language was just priceless. And it made me think that maybe Trump had him hypnotized. Maybe it was that moment where he goes, holy, where am I? How'd I get here? You deserve it. Anyway, Brian sent me an email during the break. Sent me the contract, the non-compete clause from Jimmy John's. And in it, you know, and this is where I hadn't seen the language before of the actual contract, but number 3 of the employment contract is non-competition covenant. That employee covenants agree that during her employment with employer for a period of 2 years after either the effective date of termination of his or her employment for any reason, whether voluntary or involuntary, or whether by employer or employee, or date on which employee began to comply with this paragraph, whichever is later, he or she will not have any direct or indirect interest in or perform services for, whether as owner, partner, investor, director, officer, representative, manager, employee, principal, agent, advisor, or consultant Any business which derives more than 10% of its revenue from selling submarine hero-type deli-style pita or wrapped or rolled sandwiches. And yes, you are allowed to laugh. But the sad reality is they get away with this. People had to sign this. And thank you, Brian, but I had to read it because it's a sandwich shop. Does this mean I can no longer make my own sandwiches even? I mean, as
long as you're not making money from it.
Oh, my gosh.
It's the last sandwich shop you'll ever work at.
Yeah. It's like the Men in Black.
It is.
Maybe that's
There you
the
go.
last sandwich you'll ever make.
Yeah, there you go.
But it's this kind of insanity where you go, really, how much do we allow employers to get away with? Now, is this something that they would be able to enforce in a court of law if you went and got a job at McDonald's and then McDonald's comes out with a pita? Because you're basically saying you can't work at most certainly not Subway. And you can't work at McDonald's because they've got pita wraps. You can't work at any fast food joint because they all have something.
Yeah.
So basically you're saying, as a low-wage employee, if I work for you, I will never work again.
Yeah. I think I have heard some stories of people fighting these arbitration clauses in court. But unfortunately, because the majority of them are, of the sandwich maker ilk, they don't necessarily have the same kind of legal access as, say, the executives at Jimmy John's.
Yeah. No, I understand that. And Brian didn't send this, but I think in this, because this was 2014, it came out. That since then, this has really been put down.
Yeah.
But the fact that they would do this is really, really quite remarkable. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to thericksmithshow.com. If you've missed any portion of the program, you can download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. A Brazilian federal prosecutor Thursday opened a criminal investigation into alleged crimes committed by McDonald's. The federal prosecutor is looking into allegations of fiscal and economic crimes by McDonald's, including suspected tax evasion and violations of Brazil's franchise and competition laws. The Brazilian prosecutor, Marcos Jose Gomes Correa, has issued an indictment against McDonald's. If found guilty as charged, McDonald's could face serious penalties, fines and penalties of more than $342 million. Plus an additional 10 to 50% of the amount of the fine against the company to its CEO. There are also other penalties if McDonald's is found guilty. The UAW is protesting worker rights violations and hazardous working conditions at Ford Auto Parts supplier Ground Effects. The union says the Dearborn Auto Parts plant is interfering with a fair union election process at the plant. John Salazar was fired from the plant. He told the Detroit Free Press why the workers are protesting at Ground Effects.
The main reason we're out here is to get fair working conditions, better pay, safer environment. We have isocyanates that are used, chemicals in the company, without proper ventilation, and a lot of people have had problems with their skin rashes.
10 OSHA complaints were recently filed complaining of repeated skin contact with the isocyanates and the health issues that workers say it's caused. The UAW is trying to organize Ground Effects, and in July the UAW lost by a single vote. The NLRB set aside those election results due to the company threatening to move or close the plant if it went union. Salazar says workers at Ground Effects need a union contract.
We need a contract with the company. Everybody that runs a business or does business has a contract with their company. We think we deserve our contract with this company to be treated fairly and for our job security.
The California Nurses Association, National Nurses United, says the union has reached a real breakthrough with tentative labor contracts for 8,000 nurses. The nurses work at Sutter Hospitals in California, in San Francisco, and the East Bay. The tentative deals cover nurses at facilities in Berkeley, Oakland, and San Francisco. They will vote on the tentative contract next week.
Brought to you by Union Active, affordable, state-of-the-art web design using responsive web technology with easy-to-use content tools, member management features, and a host of other tools that make Union Active your perfect web solution. Designs, prices, and features are online at unionactive.com. Workers Independent News is heard daily on The Rick Smith Show, live 3 to 6 p.m. coast to coast at thericksmithshow.com. The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
Taxes too high, wages too high. We're not going to be able to compete against the world. I hate to say it, but we have to leave it the way it is. People have to go out, they have to work really hard, and they have to get into that upper stratum.
Everything's raising but the wages. Everything's raising but the wages. Gasoline, groceries, and our wages.
Yes. So the Donald says you just got to go out and you got to work harder. Just put the shoulder to the wheel and work a lot harder. And I guess that's what we heard last night in the locker room debate. We heard a lot about job creation and rebuilding the middle class. But the reality is everyone on that stage last night vehemently anti-union. Maybe not completely. I guess Donald would be the best of them, and that's how scary all this is. Donald Trump is the least bad, in my view, when talking about unions, because there are a number of places where he has had union employees and their contracts in place, which is kind of concerning, because right now, as we've talked about, the Trump International Hotel there in Las Vegas, their workers back in December, they voted to have union representation. They wanted to negotiate a contract, and the Donald is now taking that very Republican anti-union stance, which is why I've asked Cole Stengler, labor reporter over at the International Business Times, to come talk with us about his recent story on the Trump International Hotel, Las Vegas. Cole, thanks for taking time for us.
Great to be back.
So, as I get this, the workers there at Trump International Hotel voted back in December, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So this big hotel, Trump International Las Vegas, there's about 500 workers at this hotel. It's on the Las Vegas Strip, next to a number of these other ginormous casinos, hotels, many of whom already have union representation. Nevada's right to work, but Las Vegas is a big union town, especially on the Strip. So these employees wanted to join a number of their other colleagues at these other hotels and casinos, voted for union representation in December, and shortly after the election, the company that owns the hotel, which is a subsidiary of Donald Trump's Trump Organization, the Republican presidential candidate, they filed objections with the NLRB saying that union organizers were engaging in intimidation, coercion, forcing the employees to vote yes, and that's kind of making its way through the labor board right now, and you actually had a hearing officer for the board disagree with the company, recommending that the regional director overrule the company's objections, quote, in their entirety. So basically siding with the workers, with the union, and we're kind of getting close to the NLRB is expected to certify that election soon. But basically, this is a case of you have a company like many other companies, kind of delaying the election procedure and kind of just stalling this process out.
Yeah, because they can. And I guess you could make the argument that, Trump's just doing what the law allows him to do. And, this is, I guess, one, how bad our laws have become and how badly broken they are and why we need to be fixing them. But, being the face of the Republican Party, doesn't that also put him in a position where he has to fight back on this?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's probably pressure on the party to there's no question where the kind of party stance is in general on collective bargaining. But, it's interesting. Donald Trump is a guy who's kind of touted the fact that as a businessman in New York, he's worked with unions and has had a good relationship with them. But here you have workers at one of his hotels, and these people are not paid particularly well. It's grueling, backbreaking work. They're housekeepers. They're working 40 hours a week for under $15. So I mean, they're not asking for a whole lot here, and this is a giant company guy who touts his business success and how wealthy he is, how wealthy his company is, basically fighting these largely immigrant workers over something that they decided democratically.
That's got to be interesting in talking with his workers who I got to wonder what their opinions of his stance on we're going to build a wall and make the Mexicans pay for it.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I talked to several of them in New York yesterday. They're kind of on this tour across the country as Trump's presidential campaign continues to soar. Unite Here, the union that helped organize these workers, the big culinary workers local in Las Vegas, Unite Here is kind of going on this tour with the workers, trying to just demand that Trump drop its objections and get to the negotiating table right now, and start negotiating the contract. So they're outside the Trump Tower in New York, this giant hulking building that serves simultaneously as Donald Trump's house, as kind of a headquarters for his business. They were trying to kind of raise awareness outside there, try to deliver a petition inside. And I think this weekend they're going to be in Louisiana and Michigan, where these important Republican primaries are, just trying to get the message out. So I talked to them as part of this kind of tour they're on. And, the workers were kind of reluctant to talk about their real feelings about Donald Trump. I suspect maybe they were, not sharing things because they're in a precarious position as well.
Right.
I mean, you're talking to immigrant workers from Mexico who work for Donald Trump. And so, you can sort of understand if they're not willing to share their opinions about the guy on the record. But, I mean, it's tough if you're in that position where you actually work for the guy.
Yeah, I can't imagine the courage that it takes, Cole, to stand up and say, I want better wages, hours, and conditions, given that scenario you just laid out.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like I said, the demands here, really not major demands. I mean, if you look at Las Vegas, the hotels on the Strip, most of them are already represented by unions. And the other kind of funny wrinkle to this story, or maybe funny is the wrong word, maybe ironic would be more appropriate, but last year you had kind of a similar scenario unfold at a Trump-owned hotel in Toronto, Canada. Workers there voted to organize, and they successfully negotiated their first contract already with the company. So you kind of have this situation where Trump, who insists, how much he cares about the American worker and preventing other countries from beating us on these trade deals and from beating us. You have his company going out negotiating contract with the workers in Canada when they organize. Meanwhile, in the U.S., these workers in Las Vegas, you have the company that's dragging its feet. So there's a kind of interesting parallel there that would appear to conflict with his kind of nationalist, pseudo-populist rhetoric.
I would argue that it's not that. It's more the laws in each country. I mean, in Canada, they're much more union friendly. They're much more encouraging of people, going through the process and getting through it, as where we allow employers to play all of these games and do the intimidation and the harassment and all of the delay and stall tactics that they get away with. I think that's the bigger difference.
I don't fundamentally disagree with you there, because you're right. The bigger point is if you're an employer and you know that you can drag your feet on this, you know that you can contest the election results before you even get to bargaining. I mean, it's in your interest to do that, right? Well, I mean, why wouldn't you if you can drag your feet and get away with it?
Exactly. Which is why the reason I bring it up and the reason that I'm focused on it is none of those people on the stage last night are the champions of workers' rights. In fact, they're the ones who want to make this what we're talking about that much harder, if not impossible. And I think that's one of the keys out of this. And that's why I hope those workers are going on the tour to inform people of Trump's practices, so that maybe it raises that question of, why are we doing it this way?
Right. I mean, if you care about improving the economy, you care about improving jobs and improving wages, why would you oppose and not allow workers to organize and democratically decide for themselves that the that they want higher wages and they want better conditions.
No, absolutely. But, in watching the debates on the Republican side from start to finish, they all talk about how much they love the middle class and how much they want to create jobs, and they want those jobs to be good, solid paying middle class jobs. And the reality is the only thing that raises wages is collective bargaining power. It's the power of workers to negotiate. Right now, we're below 5%. That used to be full employment. We had a huge month of job creation. Wages actually went down during that month.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I mean, I think in addition to even the point about collective bargaining and the kind of general GOP hostility to that concept, there's also this question of the minimum wage, which is kind of on the lower end of the spectrum of wages. You have all the candidates there, correct me if I'm wrong, are actually opposed to raising the minimum wage. I think it was only Rick Santorum in that larger GOP field who was the only one, I think, who said he supported raising the federal minimum wage, and even that was a very modest increase. But basically, you have all the front runners right now who do not support raising the federal minimum wage, which, it's an interesting economic policy if you say you care about improving wages. It's also an interesting political position to take that will be interesting to try to sell to the voters at this time.
I found it interesting that Kasich came out and said, at one point that, he wasn't the one who was in favor of it. Ohio just did it because it's part of their law. They index it, the wage goes up. It's not necessarily that he did it. And I found it interesting he tried to walk away from the state having an indexed minimum wage.
Right. Well, we can look at where Kasich stands in the polls, and that might be all you need to know.
But sadly, I mean, if you watched last night's locker room debate, he seemed the most moderate. He seemed really the most presidential. The other ones were, with the, I don't know. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I actually had to not let my kids listen to it. It was that bad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you. I mean, and I think, I think just getting back to this question of Donald Trump and kind of being recognized right now for his economic populist rhetoric on the campaign trail, and I think there's a real conflict between the rhetoric and what he says and versus what his records are on things like this when workers are actually trying to organize.
Right. And on his business practices as a whole. I mean, where his ties are made and where his stuff is made, and those are important issues that have to be raised.
Right, and and his latest crusade is about this whole. Or I shouldn't say his latest crusade, but I mean big part of his campaign has been talking about trade, unfair trade policies, appealing to kind of rhetoric that the labor movement talks about a lot. Unfair trade policies from countries hampering job growth and leading to job cuts. But he actually gave there was a report that was yesterday actually that came out showing that Trump actually gave a speech. I think it was in 2005 at Trump University, touting how outsourcing was actually a good tool, and outsourcing was a positive thing. So,
well, for him it is, I think, Cole. I mean, honestly, for business, it's a great thing. It increases profits. For the working people of the country, it's horrible, and we know that. So it doesn't surprise me that as a business person, he would tell people like him in his or want to be like him that this is how you get to be like me. You screw those workers out of wages and you pocket the difference. That's why he's against the minimum wage. I mean, it's not that hard to get to where we've gotten. At least I don't think it is.
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, and yet now here he is on the campaign trail talking about how he's angry that you have companies like Carrier in Indianapolis leaving to go to Mexico, situations like the Nabisco plant moving from Chicago to Mexico. So he's talking this big game, but like you said, I mean, look at the business practices.
Yeah.
Look at the way that he treats workers at his own company.
And the hope is that we care about it, because at the end of all of this, I don't blame the candidates, I don't blame the moderators, I don't blame what was on the little box. I blame us, we the people, for voting for those folks. We're the ones who decide what we want to have happen. And sadly, it appears, and I think this speaks volumes for the Republican Party, is sadly that guy's the leader.
Right. Well, certainly says something about the state of the party.
Yeah. So last question I've got for you on this. We're expecting a decision Is there anything in the law that I know the Employee Free Choice Act, and I've talked about this, for a long time, had a length of period of time where a contract has to be done. What's the ruling on how long a contract can take, or is there nothing?
So they're actually at the point right now where, and I think the company had until yesterday to file an objection to this latest hearing. To this latest recommendation that the board overrule the objections,
right?
Which already is a mouthful, but we're not even at the point where the company is in bargaining right now. So you can file unfair labor practice charges over not bargaining in good faith, and that's its own issue. But we're actually still at the point where the company was contesting the results of the election. So we haven't even gotten into bargaining yet. As far as the company is concerned, the results of the election are still not valid, and the board is soon expected to certify that. It depends on whether the company files more objections, but that certification is expected soon.
Yeah, I mean, anything they can do to slow it down, delay, and then in the process, I would argue, probably get rid of some of the workers who are there, and then seek another. It's a horrible system that we've allowed to crop up around us. But Cole, I appreciate the time. I appreciate the article. And if you want to take a look at Cole's article, we've got a link at thericksmithshow.com. Just click on Cole Stangler's name right there. It'll take you. Cole, thanks so much, man.
Yeah, thanks as always.
All right, let's take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
This is why we fight, why we lie awake. This is why we fight.
Finally, radio for the rest of us. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1914. That was the day that President Woodrow Wilson signed the Seamen's Act into law. The act was in part a response to the tragic sinking of the Titanic. The International Seamen's Union was demanding changes to the working conditions at sea. The job of a seaman required long times away from home and tough physical labor. The workers had few rights. The union found a friend in Senator Robert La Follette of Wisconsin. He championed a new law that set guidelines for basic safety and decent working conditions for those who sailed under the American flag. The act set the work week at a maximum of 56 hours. It established holidays for non-essential crew. The law also improved working conditions by setting standards for cleanliness and safety on board. It abolished the practice of jailing seamen that tried to desert the ship. It required that seamen be paid half of their wages during the voyage. The practice had been to withhold wages to ensure the workers did not desert the ships at port. The new law also required that 16 square feet of space be given to each worker for sleeping. It also mandated that ships should have adequate lifeboats. These last two provisions angered the ship owners because it meant there would be less space on board for cargo. Finally, the law gave seamen the right to organize into unions. Senator La Follette described the negative reaction of the owners to his law by observing, "Already the masters of the seas are beginning to threaten dire vengeance." The act was a major victory for the rights of labor on the high seas. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Chances are, when you took a shower this morning, an AFSCME member made sure that water was clean. When you drove to work, an AFSCME member maintained the road. When you rode an elevator, an AFSCME member inspected it. I'm David Philman, Executive Director of AFSCME Council 13, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. AFSCME members enforce regulations, keep prisoners behind bars, take care of patients, protect the environment, and more. The work isn't glamorous, the salaries aren't high, but AFSCME members serve the public in every aspect of our daily lives. Chances are, you'll never see that AFSCME member working in a sewage plant, diving underwater to repair a bridge, or answering a 911 call. But aren't you glad they do? For more information, visit AFSCME13.org. We are AFSCME. We make Pennsylvania happy!
This is the Media Matters Minute. I'm Eric Honinoki. Donald Trump's presidential campaign is running for cover following the revelation that a white nationalist radio host received press credentials for a Trump campaign rally and conducted an interview with Donald Trump Jr. In the interview, pro-Confederate and white nationalist radio host James Edwards discussed the media's political correctness with Trump Jr. Listen here.
It seems to me that the establishment press has long since abandoned objective reporting and now sees itself as the enforcer of political correctness. Am I off base in drawing that conclusion, and why do you?
No, not at all. I mean, it's amazing when I see some of the stuff.
Civil rights groups have long criticized the radio program for its promotion of, quote, neo-Nazis, Holocaust deniers, raging anti-Semites, and other extremists. After coming under scrutiny for the interview, Trump Jr. blamed the incident on a booking error. Edwards and his syndicator claim otherwise. Regardless of what happened, the fact remains that the Trump campaign continues to flirt with white nationalist support. For more on this and other stories, please visit MediaMatters.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. A little bit of, you can file this under the do as I say category. And I'm going to guess Wayne is a parent, because as parents we do that a lot. Don't do as we do as we say. Anybody who has seen the Crazy Political Action Conference, CPAC, I mean, Conservative Political Action, Crazy PAC. Anyone who's seen Crazy PAC, and good on Donald Trump for deciding that he was going to bail. Best decision that Donald has made. Stay away from the crazy people. Wayne LaPierre, he said that gun-free zones, and you know this, you know who Wayne LaPierre is, obviously, right? He's the head of the NRA, right?
Mm-hmm.
He says that little Wayne says that, channeling my inner Donald.
Aw, yeah, Lil Wayne.
Lil Wayne says that the worst, most dangerous policies of all lies and all of that are gun-free zones. Gun-free zones are horrible. They're bad. We should never have them. Yet he said it from a gun-free zone.
Oh, dear.
Because if you walk into Crazy Action PAC, because they understand, look, we've got crazy people here. No guns. Big sign, and I've seen them because I've been through there before. Big sign says no guns allowed. I find it just... Now, you would think, and this is one of those things where I go, you would think, because look, the NRA convention wouldn't let you take guns into the convention floor either. Understand that?
Really?
You could have them all on the outside, but not in the convention hall.
This is wrong. That's where they need to be.
And you may remember, I mean, they were the ones who, they wanted guns at the Democratic National Convention a couple years back. They were angry about it, yet their own convention. No. Bad. No. And where would you feel safest? I mean, if you're a gun nut, wouldn't you feel safest among other gun nuts knowing we've all got guns?
Yes, I'm amongst my kin. Yes.
Yet their Lil Wayne is, touting the wonders of everyone having guns while not having his gun.
He must have felt like absolutely naked. He must have felt absolutely naked.
From what I hear, and now understand, I don't know this to be absolute fact. But from what I've heard, Lil Wayne probably doesn't carry a gun anyway.
Oh, really?
For the reason that Lil Wayne is bad with guns, from what I've been told. Evidently, how the story goes, and this is one of those, there's some video to back this up, which is why I feel a little confident in being able to say it. Evidently, while shooting one of the videos with Lil Wayne shooting the gun, someone called his name, and he turned to them, pointing a double-barrel shotgun right at them, instead of as a properly trained person with a gun would do, and that's point it down. You know, I'm not the brightest guy in the world.
No, but you don't point a gun at someone.
Yeah,
that's
bad.
just, we don't do that. We teach small children not to do that.
So it's my hope that he isn't one of the gun nuts that he purports to support, that he's at least smart enough to realize that he's not good with guns, and he's not going to put the rest of us in danger.
Yeah, either that or he needs to take the NRA training.
Of which I guess he has taken and still didn't sink in. And that's also my problem. There are people who should not have guns. They shouldn't be.
Absolutely.
For a bunch of reasons.
Absolutely.
And this fetish of everyone, we're going to be safer when there are more guns, is ludicrous because I don't know about you, but I've read study after study. Points out that the more guns, the less safe.
Oh, yeah. I think I read that study, too. Or one of the 5,000 other ones that say the exact same thing.
Now, the ones from the NRA, those are obviously the ones that are going to keep us safe because, well, I got to wonder if the person writing it didn't have a gun to his head.
Well, are we talking about a gun-free zone here?
But I just find that ironic. And it's one of those things that's just kind of, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That should be the place where all of the loonies are displaying their sidearms and showing off.
You would think like they would just walk in there with the assault rifle necklace.
It'd be like show and tell.
Yes.
For loonies.
They'd be happy.
And they would be, and maybe they would start shooting into the air and the bullets would come down and thin the herd.
Yes.
Maybe. Yes. Or maybe someone would, I don't know. There's a bunch of really interesting scenarios there, which they don't trust themselves for, which is why it's a gun-free zone.
No, I think they're just paranoid that liberals will start, infiltrating then, It'll be just like mass chaos at the CPAC.
Here he says the simple truth is that the only way to stop a bad guy with the gun, come on, say it with me, is with a good guy with a gun. There you go. See?
I've heard that rhymes, Wade.
It does. He says that millions of children go to school today, and they're no longer sitting ducks of the worst and most dangerous of all lies, gun-free zones, because we're going to arm teachers. Now, I go back and I think of something a friend of mine told me, because a friend of mine said he lived in Texas and he used to carry a gun everywhere he went because they used to shoot little rodents that were nuisance. That's the reason he carried
armadillos.
Whatever those are. Mm-hmm. And he said a neighbor came over with their child, 5, 6 years old, a small child.
Mm-hmm.
And, he had his dog and the little girl was petting the dog and he bent down on one knee to pet to talk to the little girl and pet the dog. And he looked down and he noticed that the gun was pointed right at the dog's head and the little girl's chest. He said he took it off, he set it on the dresser, and he hasn't worn it since because, what could have happened?
Oh, my gosh.
Are we that afraid of a nation? I mean, this is one of those things you go back to what made America great. What is infuriating to me is when did we become such pansies that everything scares us to death, that behind every corner is like, somebody's going to come and get us, and, be afraid. When did that happen?
It's existed as long as I've been alive. So
I argue it was 9/11.
You would be the one to... Well,
I argue it was 9/11. Look, we used to let our kids...
I think it was before that,
We used to let our kids go out and run around. I think about my childhood. I was gone from the moment the sun went up until the street lights came on. And we ran around, we played. Today, you let your kid go 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, let them go run around in a park by themselves, somebody's going to jail.
Oh, yeah. No, but we also know that today that's a bad idea to be the helicopter parent. We've learned that one again.
But we're trained to be helicopter parents.
Now, as a society, yes. But I think the last place guns should be would be in schools. Have you been around middle schoolers?
I have.
Do you really want to give them a weapon?
And
don't put it anywhere near them. And don't give the teacher a weapon. Come on, that person is locked in a room with 30 of them in a day. It goes bad.
It could go bad quickly, but it just caught my interest. And again, he got to deliver his line, and I'm sure they paid a lot for the focus group testing. The only thing to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Yeah, except at CPAC where no one can have a gun.
Well, there are no good guys there. Come on.
There you go.
Thank you.
Beautiful. You bum. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show.
The indictment yesterday, it was a very serious charge. It involved up to, I believe, 10 years of jail time.
Big oil CEO dies just one day after indictment on conspiracy charges.
The bottom line for me is that fossil fuel companies cannot wreck our planet for their short-term profits.
Bernie Sanders pledges to stop 2 more tar sands pipelines. Florida bans fracking bans.
What?
Oregon breaks up with coal. Iowa breaks wind records, that is. Plus,
there are definitely areas where, the Earth is covered with pollution almost all the time.
Astronaut Scott Kelly's new perspective on returning to Earth.
All of those new perspectives and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Now, I don't know what my Republican colleagues are smoking.
Oh, I think you do, Bernie Sanders. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, I know when you started working on this story, it was about accountability for a crime. Now, this story has suddenly turned into something quite different.
Yes, that's right. Oklahoma City police say that the controversial former CEO of Chesapeake Energy, Aubrey McClendon, died in a single-car crash on Wednesday, the day after the Justice Department indicted him on charges of conspiracy to cheat homeowners out of royalties on oil and gas leases. Federal prosecutors alleged that McClendon illegally colluded with another company to rig prices for oil and gas leases in Oklahoma from 2007 to 2012. McClendon's aggressive leasing tactics were legendary in the fracking industry.
And apparently the company itself was cooperating with the Justice Department on this?
It does appear to be so.
Do we know if this was suicide or anything else at this point?
That certainly has been the speculation.
And officials explained that he veered off in traffic and went headlong into a bridge.
Yes, at a high rate of speed without a seatbelt.
Wow, just an amazing story.
In a surprise move, a Republican-led Florida State Senate committee has voted down a bill that would have banned local communities from banning fracking, the controversial natural gas drilling technique that's been linked to water contamination and earthquakes. The vote means that over 40 local fracking bans may stay in place, and that's opposite from most Republican-majority state legislatures across the nation, like Texas, where state legislatures have banned local fracking bans.
So why would Florida Republicans want to do this? Usually they are in favor of fracking.
It was attached to a bill that would have established a moratorium until a study was completed, and they didn't want to do that.
Okay, so instead of killing fracking altogether, they're allowing localities to ban it if they want.
Right.
Well, I guess that much is a good thing.
In presidential politics, Senator Bernie Sanders at a rally in Minnesota came out against two controversial proposed oil pipelines across the state. The pipelines are proposed by Enbridge, the same Canadian company responsible for the billion-dollar Kalamazoo River pipeline spill in Michigan 5 years ago that still hasn't been cleaned up. Sanders said he'd use the same test that President Obama used to reject the Keystone XL pipeline.
He wouldn't approve it if it made climate and our planet more dangerous. Those are exactly the same standards that we need to apply to the Alberta Clipper and the Sandpiper, and that is what I would do as President of the United States.
Despite his stance to keep fossil fuels in the ground, Sanders won Super Tuesday contests in the oil states of Oklahoma and Colorado. Oregon breaks up with coal. The Oregon State Legislature this week passed two bills that will phase out the use of coal in the state by 2030 and require utilities to generate half their electricity with renewable energy sources by 2040. Iowa breaks wind records, that is. Wind energy in Iowa last year generated more than 31% of all electricity in Iowa, making it the first state in the nation to cross the 30% renewable electricity mark, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration.
Way to go, Iowa.
Finally, NASA astronaut Scott Kelly safely returned to Earth with his Russian cosmonaut colleagues on Tuesday after spending nearly a year orbiting the planet on board the International Space Station. In his final press conference from space, Commander Kelly said his unique vantage point gave him a new outlook on the environment.
There are definitely areas where, the Earth is covered with pollution almost all the time. And, it's not good for any of us. And, there are weather systems that I've seen while I was up here that were in places that were unexpected, storms, bigger than, we've seen in the past. And this is a human effect. You can tell that is not a naturally occurring phenomena. It is just a blanket of constant pollution in certain areas. So, we can fix that if we put our minds to it.
Well, that's a whole lot of ifs, and it relies on a whole lot of minds in this country that Well, anyway, welcome back to Earth, Commander. For much more on today's stories and the ones we couldn't get to, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find us and follow us on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
I'm on top of the world, looking down on creation, and the only explanation I can find is the love that I found.
The most important issues of the day. This is the Rick Smith Show.
As if today isn't weird enough already. I don't know if you saw the story of evidently when they were tearing down OJ's house, the construction crew found a folding buck knife that had blood on it. And evidently the construction worker handed it over to the police officer who was off duty. And I guess this goes back to 1998, from what I understand. The off-duty cop then took it home and I guess sat in a drawer for all of these years. And just recently he asked a detective friend of his to get the number of the case for which, Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman were killed under. Get me the number so that he could have it engraved in a frame with the knife. I'm not making this up. So now they're going, now have we found the murder weapon? Who knows? But an interesting kind of day. Anyway, let's find out what's going on in Crazy Land. I've got Justin Duckham, Talk Media News Service from the Crazy Political Action Committee, Crazy PAC. Justin, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, it's great to be here as always.
Still alive, I see.
I certainly am. Yep, and I've learned to embrace it and come around to it. So all I have to say is Donald Bush 2016 or something.
I understand that big announcement today from Crazy PAC. We're not going to have Ben Carson to ignore anymore.
We are not. He actually just made that statement a few minutes ago. He came out on stage and noted that he is not going to be on the campaign trail any longer, saying there's a lot of people who love me, they just won't vote for me. He said that he is going to be involved in a lot of different things, including an organization called My State's Votes, which, he was laying out as sort of a new guide for telling faith-based voters how exactly to head to the polls and cast their vote in the way that God intended, which, frankly sounds like a kind of a Ben Carson-like stand to fall for, since he has been sort of open to, having his name manipulated for a number of things. So we'll see how that turns out. But that seems to be the big future that he's going to be pursuing.
That's beautiful. I mean, that's almost as good as the Donald stakes. The Trump stakes. Will he put his name? Never mind. So the question that I have is, the second he said, I'm out, did the Secret Service say, screw you, I'm going home?
I'm actually looking at the Secret Service right now, and they are still here, so I don't believe he lost it immediately. I think there may need to be a formal process of, probably leaving the building before they leave, but it looks like they're still checking people as we speak.
All righty. I can't imagine being there. I know Wayne LaPierre, the guy of the NRA, said, the gun zones are the biggest lie and they're dangerous and all that stuff. But you're in a gun-free zone, right?
We are. Apparently that was from the Secret Service who put that order out there. But, that certainly has been, raising a lot of eyebrows around here.
Yeah, but even before the Secret Service was there, I mean, still no guns. You would think, the crazy people would want to show off their tool.
You would think as much, but, I guess they're being left here today. Although I do have a very snazzy Ronald Reagan sticker that I picked up today that says, try taking away these guns, and displays the former president wearing a beanie and a wife beater. So
nice. Pretty
interesting.
There's an interesting image, Ronald Reagan and a wife beater. I'm sure Reagan is thrilled that his legacy is now there. Beautiful.
I think it may be slightly photoshopped.
Do you think?
I'm not sure. I can't quite determine it, but something like that tells me.
But speaking about crazy tools, did you watch the debate last night?
Yeah.
Any surprise at the talk of the little Donald?
No. I mean, honestly, the entire basis of Donald Trump's public persona has been to try to drive home the fact that, it's not that small, I guess. I mean, I really don't know how else to interpret, any other action of his.
You know how I feel sorry for? I feel sorry for the reporter or the person who has to now track down any person Donald has been rumored to have slept with to ask that question.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be pretty interesting to see how that, turns out. And frankly, though, I don't think we'll see how it goes. In that kind of situation, you can probably afford hush money.
Unless Larry Flint's asking for it.
Ooh, there we go.
There you go. Now we have the intrigue, because I've been saying for a while maybe we should put these things on pay-per-view, make a cage match out of it. And since Stern's name keeps coming up, maybe have Fart Man do the moderating.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, this is becoming a whole new level of entertainment. I think we've gone beyond infotainment and just gone straight to some new higher plane in terms of political fun. And frankly, I don't think this is going to end. I think this may be the new normal.
That's scaring me, because like I said earlier, I actually had to turn it off for my kids to hear. Had to put the earbuds in to listen to the debate, because I didn't want my kids listening to that stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean that's one of those things where you probably want to wash your hands afterwards.
I wanted to wash more than that, but I look at this and we've just gotten to this crazy time, and I would argue the place where you're standing is a big driver in that.
Yeah, I mean this is sort of the embodiment of what's happened within the conservative movement for quite some time now. This honestly, of course, happened with Sarah Palin. John McCain was the one who unleashed this, and as a result, we saw this new push to get more and more outrageous, and it finally came to a head with Donald Trump.
Now, I don't know where you go from here, though. I mean, is there any talk of things getting out of hand? I mean, any talk there at CPAC of maybe this is a bridge too far?
I think that's sort of something that a lot of people are coming around to. I haven't heard much discussion of that today, but Frank Luntz did one of his famous polls yesterday, and apparently the main takeaway from the GOP debate was a sense of embarrassment, which may be a pretty good indicator that there is a sense of shame in what appears to be a growingly shameless party. Good.
I mean, at least it's a start. Because I've been saying for a while, maybe the people need to take their party back somewhere near sanity. I don't expect sanity, just somewhere near it.
Yeah, no, I mean that's certainly true. There's I'm sure some hope that after this time around they'll probably try to reassess where exactly the party's going. Perhaps try to
like last time.
Pardon?
Like last time when they did their autopsy.
We had the autopsy report that laid out a pretty good roadmap for making sure that the party was relevant. Maybe they'll listen to it. I mean, obviously there's going to be names like Nikki Haley or Paul Ryan who are probably going to be viewed as top 2020 contenders. Jeb Bush is probably going to take another stab at it, and we'll just see where they go from there. But I'm sure there's probably going to be a appetite after this one for a more uplifting conversation, hopefully.
So are there any presidential candidates going to jump in for 2020 already?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of them are sort of poised for that. I think that's probably what we could take away from Nikki Haley making the Marco Rubio endorsement. I think a lot of people who are coming up behind him are probably trying to establish themselves as 2020 contenders, and I think it's probably a pretty good explanation for the wide support that he's gotten.
Because I think I saw this earlier today that Paul Ryan has set up a presidential super PAC, right?
He hasn't set up his own super PAC. This is apparently set up by a former treasurer for Arlen Specter, your state's former senator, and this is aimed at drafting Paul Ryan to enter the presidential race for 2016.
Oh.
So, it's pretty easy to file super PAC, but nevertheless it shows that there is at least some appetite from somebody who is not a complete no-name to try to get things on track for him.
See, I keep saying that I thought Romney was going to be the guy. Maybe Paul Ryan. Take another beating. All right.
Yeah.
First by the black guy and then by a woman. All right. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it. Anything else at Crazy PAC that we should know?
That seems to be the bulk of it. There's some disagreement on the notion of a contested or of a brokered convention or contested convention, depending on what kind of term you want to use. John Kasich essentially came out in favor of it today, saying that he was, welcoming it, couldn't think of anything more cool to show how America works. And Ted Cruz saying that, he's not as eager to do that, saying that eventually, this should be decided by the voters and the voters alone. Yeah. So some disagreement there, and something that I'm sure is probably going to come to a head as time goes on, and the possibility gets talked more and more about.
Well, of course, Kasich would want that because it's the only way he can get the nomination.
Yeah, I mean let's be frank here. That's pretty accurate.
Yeah, well, good fun. Hey, have a great weekend there at the big shindig.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, Donald Trump's not going to be here tomorrow. He dropped out, and so that means I get to sleep in.
All right, well, good for you. Have a good sleep, and then go back.
All right, thank you so much for your support.
All right, thank you so much, Justin Duckham, Talk Media News Service. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Issues of the day. This is The Rick Smith Show.
Why are we Americans stuck with an out-of-date railroad system, while nations with a small fraction of our resources are cruising on high-speed rail networks? Because our leaders sold us out to corporate hucksters who destroyed our once great passenger train system by telling us that we Americans deserve the independence that comes from a glorious new doctrine of one person, one car. Yeah, the independence of being stuck in traffic jams. As early as the 1930s, giant corporate consortiums formed to buy out more than 100 of America's networks of streetcars and interurban train systems. Not to run them, but to rip out the tracks and pave over the rail right-of-ways to make roads. The biggest of these consortiums combined the enormous political and PR power of General Motors, Standard Oil, Firestone, and Mack Trucks. Likewise, corporate profiteers mounted a new offensive in the 1990s to undermine the higher speed potential of Amtrak's Acela trains, funding such coke-headed front groups as Cato Institute and Heritage Foundation to push hokey analyses branding Amtrak as a slow train to collectivist hell. They also bought trainloads of politicians who are still promoting the fabricated studies and talking points of the petro cabal to wreck as much of Amtrak as they can and derail fast train proposals. Railroad executives themselves preferring the oligopolistic and very profitable freight business to passenger travel play along. This is Jim Hightower saying there's no economic, technological, geographic, budgetary, or conceptual barrier to our country having the best, most effective, state-of-the-art train service in the world. The reality is the U.S. is in the caboose of transportation innovation only because special interest politics continues to thwart our national will, leaving us with a rail system that's a national embarrassment.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's populist take on what the powers that be are up to. Find out more at hightowerlowdown.org.
From United Nations headquarters in New York, this is your World in 2 Minutes. I'm your host, Luke Vargas, for Talk Media News. A group of 6 UN human rights experts say the ongoing water crisis in Flint, Michigan is fundamentally about human rights. The experts cited statistics showing African American children were roughly twice as likely to have high levels of lead in their blood than white children. Lead, they said, is just one of many toxic chemicals to which minorities and the poor are often disproportionately exposed. Among other recommendations, the group urged the U.S. to ratify the Convention on the Rights of the Child, a 1989 agreement establishing universal rights and protections for children. The U.S. is the only country yet to ratify that agreement.
I want to appeal to all potential illegal economic migrants, wherever you are from. Do not come to Europe. Do not believe the smugglers. Do not risk your lives and your money. It is all for nothing.
That was European Council President Donald Tusk on Thursday during a visit to Greece. While Tusk's words sound like an unwelcome message to asylum seekers, note that he used the term illegal economic migrants. Several European countries, including Germany, are angered by the high numbers of North Africans from such countries as Morocco and Algeria who fled to Europe for economic reasons, not because they're at risk of persecution back home. Morocco and Algeria are refusing to repatriate many unsuccessful asylum applicants given their lack of proper paperwork. The commingling of economic migrants and legitimate refugees is seen as exacerbating the migration situation in Europe. For more global news headlines, visit TalkMediaNews.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. So, interesting little tidbit over at USA Today, and it kind of got me looking at our trade deficit and the massive loss of jobs in our country. They showed this new ship. I actually don't know what to call it. A floating monstrosity, something. It's the Benjamin Franklin, and I love this. They named it the Benjamin Franklin, and yes, it is named after one of the founding fathers of our nation. It's owned by a French shipping company, built in China, sails under a British flag. It's crewed by a Filipino crew, and it's captained by a Croatian. So you figure that one out, because I'm struggling, but it has the name of Benjamin Franklin on the side of it. It has docked here in the U.S., and what they're saying is it's another example of our broken infrastructure, because this massive floating, it's the size of the Empire State Building. It's a floating Empire State Building. It is the size, it is 12 highway lanes wide. It's 1,306 feet long. It's longer than any U.S. aircraft carrier, and it's crewed by less than 30 people. And think about this for a second. This is the future, and this is going to be the norm very soon, because the industry is going, hey, we can actually save some money on transport back and forth, and it's a little more fuel efficient because it runs on 11 Boeing 747 jet engines. This massive, enormous thing, and 18,000 20-foot containers. So when you see all of those containers driving up and down the road, you know what I'm talking about, the containers? 20,000 of those in one ship.
Oh, my word.
Think of how many tennis shoes and T-shirts and toys and furniture, and you just go down the list and how many jobs we've lost to have those ships come into our ports.
Now, that's a metaphor that was absent at the GOP debate.
And I go back to, named after one of the founding fathers of this country, owned by a French company, built by the Chinese, under a British flag, Filipino workers with a Croatian captain.
Welcome to the globalized 21st century? Yeah?
And huge profits for the handful.
Huge.
Because what we're now doing is, these are floating. Oh my gosh.
Floating as large as the Empire State Building?
The Empire State Building.
Well, that's yet another, wonderful metaphor.
And now what's going on, and this is one of those things where you go, how's it going to cost us, the taxpayers, money? Because the Port of Long Beach, where this is docked, is one of the few places in the U.S. where they can bring this big of a ship in, because it's got to be deep enough. The dredging that has to happen. There are other ports who are spending billions of dollars to upgrade, because evidently most ports do not have cranes tall enough to reach to get the boxes off.
Oh,
so you might be able to get in the water, but you can't get the cranes to get them off. So who's going to pay for that? Well, of course, we, the taxpayer folk, we're going to do that.
And then we're going to pay to get all the stuff that's on there.
It's nearly 200 feet high.
200 feet high.
177 feet wide, 1,306 feet long. Think about that. So now we're going to have a race for dredging. Now we're going
Dredging.
to. Well, this is what's going to happen. Look, they dredged in Philadelphia. They're dredging up and down the East Coast to fit these bigger and bigger and bigger ships. Because look, we're not making as much as we used to. So all of the things we buy at the store, all of the things that we've got at the Wally Worlds and the Kmarts, and those come from somewhere, and it's not here.
We buy lots of stuff, lots and lots of stuff.
And, I keep going back to the argument going, instead of making bigger and bigger ships and deeper and deeper dredges and all of this stuff, why don't we just make the stuff here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why don't we have those jobs? And it comes back to, we don't have the policies.
No. Maybe we could start building the ships that bring us the stuff.
No, we couldn't possibly do that.
Dude.
That would make sense.
Yeah, it would make sense.
It's like...
We could send out our own ships to get our things.
Maybe we could load the ships up and send them out.
Oh, hold on a second. Didn't we used to do that?
We did used to do that.
Oh.
That was a long time ago.
Huh.
That was back when we had people running our government and not completely and totally lobbyists and the such.
Yeah, I mean, it hadn't been bought yet.
I mean, I think about this, and I there are days where I go, I wish I could talk to my grandfather, who was wasn't really an educated guy, but was a street smart guy. And I wish I could go, okay, Grandpa, here it is. I'm going to lay this out to you. We're going to export all of our jobs so we can get cheap plastic crap from China. That's going to cause us all to lose wages and jobs, and we're going to take these big, giant, massive ships and bring them in here.
Yeah.
I would have to think he would look at me like I was an alien with a third head.
Yeah.
Because no one would agree to that.
This would make no sense.
Yet we have been trained for all of these years to go, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give me the Trump steaks and the Trump vodka from Trump
Oh.
University.
Oh. And cover it all in gold.
Oh, there you go.
Ugh.
Oh, what a week it has been. I got to tell you, just very, very, very strange week. I'm looking forward to the weekend. I hope you have a great weekend as well. We're taking Monday off. I'm going to be going to Cleveland. We have a relative that is not doing well. We're going to take a day to go and visit. We will be back live on Tuesday. Love to hear your thoughts, your comments, questions. What did you think of the GOP debate, or whatever you want to call it, the locker room debate, the sandbox debate, a lot of things I can't say on terrestrial radio debate? I'd love to hear it. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you missed any of the program, you can get the podcast there at the website or get the app on your smartphone. Take the program on the go. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Tuesday.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Together, we can make America better. Email rick@thericksmithshow.com or interact with us anytime at thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Its color like the tidal flood beneath the blur sway, imperial, mysterious, in amorous array. Democracy's color to the USP.
We see the storm out on the horizon. The clouds grow dark in the midnight sky. We feel the fire burn